The Fiend with 20 Faces. By Edogawa Ranpo. Forward. At that time, in every town and every house in Tokyo, whenever two or more people met, they would talk about the mysterious phantom thief, the Fiend with 20 Faces, as if discussing the weather. 20 Faces was the nickname of this enigmatic thief who filled the newspapers day after day. It was said he possessed 20 completely different faces. In other words, he was a master of disguise. Apparently, no matter how bright the place or how closely you observed him, his disguises were utterly undetectable, making him appear to be a completely different person. He could flawlessly transform himself into an old man, a young man, a millionaire, a beggar, a scholar, a ruffian, or even a woman. As for the thief's real age and appearance, no one had ever seen them. He had 20 different faces, but no one knew which one was real. Perhaps even the thief himself had forgotten his true face. That's how constantly he appeared before people with different faces and different appearances. Such a genius of disguise naturally baffled the police. They had absolutely no idea which face to search for. Their only consolation was that this thief only stole beautiful, rare, and extremely valuable items like jewels and art. He seemed to have little interest in cash, and he had never harmed or killed anyone. He hated blood, however. Despite his aversion to bloodshed, he was still a criminal, and there was no telling what he might do to escape if cornered. The reason people in Tokyo talked so much about 20 Faces was, in fact, because they were terrified of him. The wealthy, especially those who possessed priceless treasures, were particularly frightened. Judging by his past exploits, he was a fearsome thief who couldn't be stopped, no matter how much they pleaded with the police. 20 Faces had one peculiar habit. Whenever he targeted a valuable item, he would always send a notice in advance, declaring the date and time he would come to claim it. Perhaps, even as a thief, he wanted a fair fight. Or perhaps he wanted to boast, showing off his skill and proving that no matter how carefully people guarded their possessions, he could still steal them. Either way, he was undoubtedly an audacious and defiant phantom thief. This story is a tale of a fierce struggle between this elusive, almost supernatural thief and Japan's greatest detective, Kogoro Akechi. A clash of strength against strength, wit against wit, a battle of sparks flying. Detective Akechi had a young assistant named Yoshio Kobayashi. This charming little detective's sharp, squirrel-like movements will also prove quite a sight. Now, with these preliminaries out of the way, let us begin the story. The Iron Trap. In a certain residential area of Azabu, there stood a grand mansion, covering an area of about 100 square meters. A tall concrete wall, perhaps 4 meters high, stretched as far as the eye could see. Entering through the imposing iron gate, one would see a large sago palm planted firmly in the ground, and beyond its lush leaves, the magnificent entrance to the house. A spacious Japanese-style house of indeterminate size and a large 2-story Western-style building with yellow brick facing stood side by side in an L shape, and behind them lay a beautiful, expansive garden, like a park. This was the residence of Mr. Star Hashiba, a prominent figure in the business world. The Hashiba family was currently experiencing a mixture of immense joy and immense fear. The joy stemmed from the return of their eldest son, Sichi, who had run away from home 10 years prior. He was returning from Borneo in the South Pacific to apologize to his father. Sichi was a born adventurer. After graduating from middle school, he and a friend set sail for new opportunities in the South Pacific, hoping to start some grand enterprise. His father, Star, adamantly refused to allow it, so Sichi eventually ran away, sneaking onto a small sailboat bound for the south. For 10 years, there had been no word from Sichi. His whereabouts were unknown. But 3 months ago, a letter suddenly arrived from Sandakan, Borneo. He wrote that he had finally become a man and wanted to return home to apologize to his father. Sichi now managed a large rubber plantation near Sandakan. Enclosed with the letter were photographs of the rubber plantation and a recent picture of Sichi himself. Now 30 years old, he sported a dashing mustache and looked every bit the grown man. His father, mother, younger sister Sanai, and even his younger brother Shi, still in elementary school, were overjoyed. He was to disembark at Shimonoseki and return by plane. They could hardly wait for the day to arrive. Now, the immense fear that gripped the Hashiba family was none other than a terrifying notice from 20 Faces. The note read, "You are no doubt aware of my identity from the newspapers. I understand that you possess 6 large diamonds that once adorned the crown jewels of the Romanov dynasty, which you treasure as family heirlooms. I have decided to acquire these 6 diamonds from you, free of charge. I intend to call on you in the near future. I will inform you of the precise date and time later. I suggest you take great care. It was signed, 20 Faces. The diamonds in question were acquired by Hashiba after a convoluted journey. After the fall of the Russian Empire, a White Russian obtained the Romanov crown jewels, removed the gems, and sold them to a Chinese merchant. Eventually, they were purchased by Hashiba and became prized possessions, worth 2 million yen. The 6 gems were currently locked in the safe in Star's study, but the phantom thief's note suggested he knew exactly where they were upon receiving the notice. Star, to his credit, didn't change color. However, his wife, daughter, and even the servants were terrified. The Hashiba family's elderly steward, Kondo, treated it as a grave matter. He made a fuss, went to the police to request protection, bought new guard dogs, and took every possible measure to prepare for the thief's arrival. A police officer lived next door to the Hashibas. Kondo asked him to invite his off-duty colleagues to take turns guarding the mansion, ensuring that 2 or 3 officers were always on duty within the premises. Furthermore, Star had 3 secretaries. With the police, secretaries, and guard dogs, the security was extremely tight. It seemed inconceivable that even 20 Faces could infiltrate such defenses. Still, what they most eagerly awaited was Sichi's return. He was a fine young man who had ventured to the South Pacific empty-handed and achieved great success. His presence would greatly reassure everyone in the household. Now, on the morning of Sichi's arrival at Haneda Airport, something strange happened. A young boy emerged from the Hashiba family's storehouse, bathed in the bright red light of the autumn sunrise. It was she, still in his towel pajamas and clutching something ominous in his hands, something that looked like a metal contraption. What was he doing? The sparrows weren't the only ones surprised. She had had a terrifying dream the previous night. He dreamt that 20 Faces had somehow snuck into the study on the 2nd floor of the Western-style building and stolen the treasures. The thief had a pale, expressionless face, like the no mask hanging in his father's living room. After stealing the treasures, the thief suddenly opened the 2nd floor window and jumped down into the dark garden. She woke with a start. Fortunately, it was only a dream. However, he couldn't shake the feeling that something similar might happen. 20 Faces will definitely jump out of that window. And he'll run across the garden to escape. She was convinced. There's a flower bed under that window. He'll trample the flowers. As he imagined this, a strange idea popped into his head. Yes, that's it. This is a brilliant plan. I'll set a trap in the flower bed. If things happen as I imagine, the thief will definitely cross that flower bed. If I set a trap there, he might just fall right into it. The trap she had in mind was an American-made iron animal trap, a sample of which had been brought over by a friend of his father's who managed a forest. He remembered it being stored in the storehouse. She became obsessed with the idea. It was doubtful whether the thief would actually step into the trap, even if he set one in the vast garden, but he didn't have time to think about such things. He simply felt an overwhelming urge to set the trap. So, waking earlier than usual, he quietly slipped into the storehouse and, with great effort, carried out the large iron device. She recalled the exhilarating feeling he had experienced when setting mousetraps. But this time, his target wasn't a mouse, but a human. And not just any human, but the notorious phantom thief, 20 Faces. The thrill was 20 times greater than with mice. Carrying the iron trap to the center of the flower bed, he forced the 2 serrated jaws open and carefully set it. Then he gathered dried grass and scattered it over the trap to conceal it. If the thief stepped into it, the jaws would snap shut like a mousetrap, clamping down on his ankle like the giant, black teeth of a ferocious beast. It would be disastrous if a member of the family stepped into the trap, but since it was in the middle of the flower bed, no one but a thief would likely tread there. There, that should do it. But will it work? If, by chance, the thief gets his ankle caught in this and can't move, it'll be so funny. She prayed for success, then, giggling to himself, he went back inside. It was truly a childish idea. However, a child's intuition should never be underestimated. Readers, please remember this trap, for you will see later what a crucial role it will play. Man or demon. That afternoon, the entire Hashiba family went to Haneda Airport to welcome Sichi home. Stepping off the plane, Sichi looked just as dashing as they had imagined. He carried a light brown briefcase, wore a perfectly tailored double-breasted suit of the same color, and his sharply creased trousers made his legs seem incredibly long, giving him the air of a Western movie star. Beneath his matching light brown fedora, his tanned but handsome face, a shade darker than his hat, beamed with a smile. His thick, straight eyebrows, large, sparkling eyes, the flash of perfectly aligned white teeth whenever he smiled, and the neatly trimmed mustache on his upper lip filled them with an indescribable sense of nostalgia. He looked exactly like his picture. No, even better. After shaking hands with everyone, Sichi got into the car, flanked by his father and mother. She rode in the car behind with his sister and Kondo, but throughout the drive, he kept gazing at his brother through the rear window, his heart swelling with happiness. Back at home, as the family gathered around Sichi, lost in conversation, evening approached. Dinner, lovingly prepared by their mother, awaited them in the dining room. A beautiful autumn flower arrangement graced the large dining table, covered with a fresh tablecloth, and silver knives and forks gleamed at each place setting. Unlike usual, neatly folded napkins had been placed beside each plate. During the meal, Sichi was naturally the center of attention. He regaled them with fascinating tales of the South Pacific. In between, memories of his boyhood, before he ran away, came flooding back. You were just learning to walk back then. You used to wander into my study and mess up my desk. One time you knocked over my inkwell and smeared your face with it. You looked like a little blackamoor, and we had quite a commotion, didn't we, Mother? Their mother couldn't quite recall the incident but nodded and smiled, her eyes brimming with tears of joy. But then, readers, the family's joy was abruptly shattered, like a violin string snapping, by a terrifying event. What a heartless demon! As if to curse their happiness, the Fiend's sinister figure appeared, casting a shadow over this joyous reunion. After 10 long years, in the midst of their reminiscing, a secretary entered with a telegram. Even engrossed as they were in conversation, they couldn't ignore a telegram. Star read the telegram, his brow furrowing slightly. Then, for some reason, he suddenly fell silent. "Father, is something wrong?" Sichi, quick to notice, asked. "Yes, something troublesome has come up. I don't want you all to worry, but with this arrival, we'll have to be extra cautious tonight." He showed them the telegram, which read, "Tonight midnight will receive promised item 20. 20 must be an abbreviation for 20 faces." Midnight indicated his intention to steal the diamonds at exactly 12 o'clock. This 20, could it be the thief, 20 faces? Sichi asked, staring at his father. "Yes. You know about him? I've heard rumors since I landed in Shimonoseki. I also read about him in the newspapers on the plane. He's finally targeting our family. But what does he want? After you left, I acquired the diamonds that once adorned the crown of the Russian Tsar. The thief intends to steal them." Star then explained in detail about 20 faces and the notice. "But I'm relieved you're here tonight, Sichi. Perhaps you and I should keep watch over the jewels tonight." "Yes, that would be best. I'm confident in my strength. I'd be happy to be of use so soon after returning home." Immediately, stringent security measures were put in place. Under the anxious direction of Kondo, all entrances, including the main gate, were tightly shut and locked from the inside at 8 p.m., even though it was still relatively early. "Tonight, we refuse all visitors, no matter who they are." The old man gave strict orders to the servants. 3 off-duty police officers, Star's 3 secretaries, and the chauffeur were to divide themselves, guarding the entrances and patrolling the premises throughout the night. Hashiba's wife, Sanai, and she were told to retire to their bedrooms early. The numerous servants huddled together in one room, whispering fearfully amongst themselves. Star and Sichi took up positions in the study on the second floor of the Western-style building. Sandwiches and wine were brought in. As they prepared for a long night, the study door and windows were all locked and bolted from the inside. There wasn't a crack for even an ant to crawl through. Settling into the study, Star said with a wry smile, "Perhaps we've been a bit too cautious." "No, with that fiend, no amount of caution is too much. I've been studying the newspaper clippings about 20 faces, and the more I read, the more terrifying he seems." Sichi replied, his face serious and anxious. "So, even with these tight security measures, you still think he might come?" "Yes, it might sound cowardly, but I have a feeling he will." "But how?" "To get the jewels, the thief would first have to scale the high wall. Then he'd have to evade all the guards, and even if he made it this far, he'd still have to break down the door. And then he'd have to fight the two of us. And that's not all. The jewels are locked in a safe that can't be opened without knowing the combination. Even if 20 Faces were a magician, how could he possibly get past these multiple layers of security? Ha ha ha. Star laughed loudly, but there was a hollow, forced quality to his laughter. But father, according to the newspapers, he's repeatedly accomplished things that seem utterly impossible. There have been cases where people felt safe because their valuables were in a safe, only to find a gaping hole in the back of the safe and everything gone. There are also cases where 5 strong men were on guard, but they were somehow drugged and fast asleep when it mattered most. He possesses the cunning to devise any means necessary, depending on the situation. Hold on, Sichi, you sound like you're admiring the thief. Star looked at his son, dumbfounded. No, it's not admiration. But the more I study him, the more terrifying he seems. His weapon isn't brute force, it's his intellect. And with enough cunning, there's almost nothing that can't be accomplished. As father and son debated, the night deepened, and a wind picked up, rattling the window panes. Your high praise for the thief is making me nervous. I'd better check on the jewels. It would be disastrous if there were a hole in the back of the safe. Star stood up, chuckling, and approached the small safe in the corner of the room. He spun the dial, opened the door, and retrieved a small, bronze box. He carried it back to his chair and placed it on the round table between himself and Sichi. This is the first time I've seen them, Sichi said, his eyes shining with curiosity. Yes, the first time for you. Well, these are the diamonds that once glittered on the head of the Russian Tsar. The lid of the box opened, and a dazzling rainbow of colors shimmered. 6 magnificent diamonds, each the size of a soybean, sparkled on a black velvet cushion. After allowing Sichi ample time to admire them, the lid of the box was closed. Let's keep the box here. It's safer with our 4 eyes watching it than in the safe. Yes, that's best. They fell silent, staring at the box on the table. The wind occasionally rattled the glass panes of the windows. From somewhere far away, the sound of a dog barking fiercely reached their ears. What time is it? 11:43. 17 more minutes. Sichi glanced at his wristwatch. They fell silent again. The ticking of the second hand on Sichi's watch seemed to amplify the silence. What time is it now? 10 minutes to go. The 2 men exchanged glances. The ticking of the second hand seemed ominous. 5 minutes. 4 minutes. 3 minutes. 2 minutes. 1 minute. The moment drew closer. Perhaps 20 Faces had already scaled the wall. Perhaps he was walking down the hallway now. Or perhaps he was already outside the door, listening intently. Any moment now, the door might be smashed open with a terrifying crash. Father, what's wrong? Nothing, nothing. I won't be defeated by 20 Faces. Despite his words, Star was pale, clutching his forehead. 30 seconds. 20 seconds. 10 seconds. The tense moments ticked by, synchronized with the beating of their hearts. What time is it? Star's voice was almost a groan. It's 1 minute past midnight. What? Past midnight? Ha ha ha. See, Sichi, even 20 Faces notices aren't reliable. The jewels are right here. Nothing out of the ordinary. Star laughed triumphantly. But Sichi didn't smile. I can't believe it. Are you sure nothing's amiss with the jewels? Would 20 Faces break his promise? What are you talking about? The jewels are right in front of us. But that's just the box. Are you suggesting that the box is here, but the diamonds inside are gone? I want to check. I won't be at ease until we check. Star stood up abruptly, clutching the bronze box. Sichi also stood. Their eyes locked in a strange gaze for a moment. All right, let's open it. Such a thing can't be possible. With a click, the lid of the box opened simultaneously. A cry escaped Star's lips. Ah! They were gone. The black velvet cushion was completely empty. The priceless 2 million yen diamonds had vanished into thin air. The magician. For a while, both men remained speechless, their faces pale, exchanging bewildered glances. Finally, Star muttered, "Strange. Strange indeed." Sichi echoed him, but strangely, He didn't seem surprised or worried. A faint smile played on his lips. There's nothing wrong with the locks, and besides, if someone had entered, I would have seen them. Surely the thief didn't slip in and out through the keyhole like a ghost. Indeed, even 20 faces couldn't turn into a ghost. Then, besides you and me, there's no one who could have touched the diamonds in this room. Star gazed intently at his son with a suspicious look. That's right. No one but you or me. Sichi's faint smile broadened into a grin. Sichi, what are you smiling about? What's so funny? Star's face paled, and he shouted. I'm impressed by the thief's skill. He's truly remarkable. He kept his promise, after all. He completely bypassed our elaborate security measures. Stop that nonsense. You're praising the thief again. Are you saying you find my being outwitted amusing? Exactly. The way you're flustered is quite entertaining. Could these be the words of a son to his father? Star was more stunned than angry. The grinning young man before him no longer seemed like his son, but some unknown entity. Sichi, don't move. Star glared at his son, moving toward the wall to ring the bell. Mr. Hashiba, you shouldn't move. Astonishingly, the son addressed his father formally. He pulled a small pistol from his pocket, tucked it under his arm, and aimed it steadily at his father, still grinning. The sight of the pistol rooted Star to the spot. Don't call for help. If you make a sound, I won't hesitate to pull the trigger. Who are you? Could you be? Ha ha ha. You've finally figured it out, haven't you? Don't worry. I'm not your son, Sichi. As you suspect, I'm the thief you call 20 Faces. Star stared at the other man as if he had seen a ghost. There was a mystery he couldn't solve. Who wrote the letter from Borneo? Whose picture was it? Ha ha ha. 20 Faces is like a magician from a fairy tale. I can make the impossible possible. Mr. Hashiba, as a thank you for the diamonds, shall I reveal my secrets? The mysterious young man explained calmly, as if oblivious to the danger he was in. I discovered that your son, Sichi, was missing. I also obtained a photograph of him from before he ran away. Then, I imagined what he might look like after 10 years, and well, I created this face. He patted his cheek, so, that photograph was none other than a picture of me. I wrote the letter, too. Then, I sent the letter and photograph to a friend of mine in Borneo and had him mail it to you from there. I'm sorry to say, but your son's whereabouts are still unknown. He's not in Borneo. From beginning to end, it was all a performance orchestrated by 20 Faces. Blinded by the joy of their son's return, the Hashiba family hadn't suspected such a cruel trick. I'm a ninja. 20 Faces continued, as if proud of himself. Do you understand? See, that ping-pong ball from earlier? That was the key to my trick. I dropped it from my pocket onto the carpet. You were distracted by it for a moment. You looked under the desk. During that brief moment, it was a simple matter to take the diamonds from the jewel box. Ha ha ha. Now, goodbye. The thief, pistol in hand, backed away. He turned the key that was still in the keyhole, quickly opened the door, and darted into the hallway. There was a window in the hallway overlooking the garden. The thief unlatched it, opened the glass door, and straddled the windowsill. Here, give this toy to she. I don't kill people. He tossed the pistol into the room and vanished. He had jumped from the second floor into the garden. Star was outwitted once again. The pistol had been a toy. He'd been too afraid of the toy pistol to call for help. But readers, you remember, don't you? The window the thief jumped from was the same window she had seen in his dream. And beneath that window, the iron trap she had set lay waiting, its serrated jaws open, ready to snare its prey. The dream had been prophetic. Perhaps that trap might prove useful after all. Perhaps in the pond. As soon as the thief threw the pistol and jumped, Star rushed to the window and looked down into the dark garden. Although dark, the garden wasn't completely unlit, thanks to the park-like lamps scattered throughout. The thief seemed to stumble upon landing but quickly regained his footing and sprinted away. As expected, he jumped into the flower bed. After taking 2 or 3 steps, a loud metallic clang rang out, and the thief's dark figure crumpled to the ground. Someone. Thief. Thief. Surround the garden. Star shouted. If it hadn't been for the trap, the agile thief would have escaped by now. She's childish prank had, by sheer luck, paid off. While the thief struggled to free himself from the trap, people came running from all directions. Plainclothes police officers, secretaries, the chauffeur, 7 in all. Star hurried down the stairs and, together with Kondo, aimed flashlights from the downstairs windows into the garden, assisting in the pursuit. It was strange, however, that John, the newly acquired guard dog, was nowhere to be seen during all the commotion. If John had been there, the thief would have had no chance of escaping. By the time 20 Faces had managed to free himself from the trap and get back on his feet, the pursuers, each carrying a flashlight, were closing in, just 10 meters away. They were approaching not just from one direction, but from the right, the left, and straight ahead. The thief ran like a black gust of wind, or perhaps more like a bullet. He broke through one side of the pursuers' encirclement and raced toward the back of the garden. The garden was vast, like a park, with an artificial hill, a pond, and a grove of trees. The darkness and the garden's size made it difficult for even 7 pursuers to effectively corner him. If only John had been there. But the pursuers were relentless. The 3 police officers, in particular, were skilled in pursuit. Seeing the thief scramble into the bushes on top of the artificial hill, they ran across the open ground to the other side of the hill, intending to cut him off with the pursuers behind. This way, the thief couldn't escape beyond the wall. Besides, the concrete wall surrounding the garden was 4 meters high. There was no way to climb over it without a ladder. "There he is. The thief's here," one of the secretaries shouted from within the bushes atop the artificial hill. Flashlight beams converged on the spot from all directions, illuminating the bushes as brightly as day. In that light, the thief, hunched over, darted from the bushes towards a grove of trees on the right side of the hill. "Don't let him escape. He's coming down the hill." The flashlight beams danced through the grove of large trees because the garden was so large and full of trees and rocks, and because the thief was so agile, they couldn't catch him, even though they could see his back right in front of them. In the meantime, alerted by a phone call, several more officers arrived from the nearby police station and surrounded the outside of the wall. The thief was trapped. The frantic chase continued for a while longer within the garden, but then the pursuers suddenly lost sight of the thief. He had been running right in front of them, weaving between the tree trunks, appearing and disappearing. And then, he was gone. They shone their flashlights on every tree, even up into the branches, but the thief was nowhere to be found. Police officers were guarding the outside of the wall. All the sliding doors of the Japanese-style house and the Western-style building were open, and every light in the house was on, illuminating the garden. Star, Kondo, she, and even the maids were out on the veranda, watching the chase. There was no way the thief could escape in that direction. He must be hiding somewhere in the garden. Yet, despite their thorough search, 7 men couldn't find him. Had 20 Faces used ninja magic again, they decided they had no choice but to resume the search at daybreak. As long as the main gate, the back gate, and the outside of the wall were securely guarded, the thief was trapped, so waiting until morning wouldn't be a problem. The pursuers left the garden to assist the officers outside. Only the chauffeur, a man named Matsuno, remained in the back of the garden. There was a large pond surrounded by a grove of trees. As Matsuno lagged behind the others, walking along the edge of the pond, something caught his eye. The water's surface, illuminated by his flashlight, was covered with fallen leaves, but among them, a piece of bamboo was sticking out slightly, swaying gently. It wasn't the wind. There were no ripples on the water. Only the bamboo was moving strangely. A bizarre idea flashed through Matsuno's mind. He almost called the others back, but he wasn't certain. It was too unbelievable. He squatted down by the pond's edge, keeping his flashlight trained on the bamboo. To test his suspicions, he did something strange. He took a tissue from his pocket, tore it into thin strips, and gently held one over the piece of bamboo in the pond. Something astonishing happened. The thin strip of paper began fluttering up and down above the end of the bamboo tube. For the paper to move like that, air must be flowing in and out of the bamboo tube. It couldn't be, could it? Matsuno couldn't believe his own theory. But what other explanation could there be? A lifeless piece of bamboo couldn't possibly breathe. In winter, such a thing would be unthinkable. But as mentioned earlier, it was October, and the weather wasn't that cold. And 20 Faces, the monstrous fiend who called himself a magician, had a penchant for bizarre stunts. Matsuno should have called the others then, but perhaps he wanted all the credit for himself. He wanted to confirm his suspicions without anyone's help. He placed his flashlight on the ground, reached out, grabbed the bamboo, and pulled. The piece of bamboo was about 30 centimeters long. It was probably something she had been playing with and discarded in the garden. The bamboo came out easily, but it wasn't just bamboo. Clinging to the end of it was a hand, blackened by the mud at the bottom of the pond. And attached to the hand, a human figure, soaked and dripping, emerged like a sea monster, the fiend in the tree. We'll leave it to your imagination, dear readers, to picture what happened next on the bank of the pond. 5 or 6 minutes later, Matsuno, the chauffeur, stood on the same bank as if nothing had happened. His breathing was a little labored, but otherwise, he looked the same. He started walking briskly towards the main house. What was this? He was limping slightly. But despite the limp, he crossed the garden quickly and arrived at the main gate. 2 secretaries stood guard at the main gate, brandishing wooden swords. Matsuno approached them, put a hand to his forehead as if in pain, and said weakly, "I'm feeling chills all over. I think I have a fever. I need to rest for a bit." "Oh, Matsuno, is that you? All right, go ahead and rest. We'll take over." One of the secretaries replied cheerfully. Matsuno disappeared into the garage next to the entrance. His room was located at the back of the garage. The rest of the night passed without incident. No one passed through the main gate or the back gate. The police officers stationed outside the wall saw no sign of the thief. At 7 o'clock, a large number of officers arrived from the Metropolitan Police Department and began searching the premises. Until the search was completed, no one in the house was allowed to leave. However, an exception was made for the students. Sanai, a third-year student at Kadowaki Middle School, and she, a fifth grader at Takashiho Elementary School, left the mansion by car as usual when it was time. The chauffeur still seemed unwell, quiet and downcast, but he insisted on driving them to school so they wouldn't be late. Inspector Nakamura of the Metropolitan Police Department first met with Star in the study, the scene of the crime, and listened to a detailed account of the incident. He then questioned everyone in the house before starting the search of the garden. "Since we arrived last night, no one has left the premises. And no one has climbed over the wall. You can be absolutely certain of this," the chief detective of the local police station assured Inspector Nakamura. "So you're saying the thief is still hiding somewhere on the grounds?" "Yes, that's the only possible explanation. We've been searching since daybreak, but so far, we haven't found anything. Except for the dead dog." "What? A dead dog?" "This family had a dog named John, to guard against the thief. It was found poisoned last night. Our investigation revealed that the impersonator, disguised as the eldest son, fed something to the dog yesterday evening. A truly meticulous plan. If the young boy hadn't set that trap, the thief would have escaped without a hitch. Let's search the garden again. It's a vast garden, there could be any number of hiding places." Just as they were discussing this, a startled cry rang out from beyond the artificial hill. "Come quickly. We've found him. We've found the thief." Hurried footsteps echoed throughout the garden as the officers rushed to the scene. Inspector Nakamura and the chief detective followed the sound of the voice. The person who had called out was one of Hashiba's secretaries. He stood beneath a large chinkapin tree in the grove, pointing upwards. "There. That's the thief. I recognize the suit." The chinkapin tree forked about 3 meters above the ground, and nestled in the fork, hidden by the dense branches, lay a figure in a peculiar position. He hadn't attempted to flee, despite the commotion. Was he dead? Or unconscious? He couldn't possibly be sleeping up in the tree. "Someone get him down," the inspector ordered. A ladder was quickly brought over. With some climbing the ladder and others waiting below to catch him, 3 or 4 men worked together to bring the figure down. "Look, he's tied up." Indeed, he was bound tightly with what appeared to be thin silk cords and gagged with a large handkerchief stuffed into his mouth and tied securely with another. Strangely, his clothes were soaking wet, as if he'd been caught in the rain. When the gag was removed, the man groaned, "Damn it! Damn it! It's Matsuno!" One of the secretaries cried out in surprise. It wasn't 20 Faces. He was wearing 20 Faces clothes, but his face was completely different. It was their chauffeur, Matsuno. But hadn't Matsuno just driven Sanai and she to school? "Why was he here? What happened to you?" the inspector asked. "Damn it. I was tricked. Tricked by that fiend," Matsuno shouted. "She's whereabouts?" According to Matsuno's account, the following bizarre events unfolded. allowing the thief to deceive his pursuers and escape right under their noses. While being chased, the thief had jumped into the garden pond and submerged himself. But he couldn't stay underwater indefinitely. He'd found a hollow piece of bamboo that she had discarded, taken it into the pond with him, and used it as a breathing tube, one end held above the water's surface. While he waited for his pursuers to leave, however, Matsuno, who had stayed behind to search the area, spotted the bamboo and realized the thief's trick. When he pulled on the bamboo, a mud-caked figure emerged from the pond. A struggle ensued in the darkness, but before Matsuno could call for help, he was overpowered, bound with silk cords the thief had in his pocket, gagged, and his clothes were switched with the thief's. Then he was hoisted up into the fork of the tall tree. This meant the chauffeur who had driven she and Sanai to school must have been an imposter. Their precious children had been driven off somewhere by 20 Faces himself. The shock and worry that gripped their parents were beyond description. They immediately called Sanai's school, Kadawaki Middle School. To their relief, Sanai had arrived safely. So, the thief hadn't intended to abduct her. Then they called Shie's school, only to be told that he hadn't shown up for class, even though it had already started. Their parents' faces turned pale. Perhaps the thief had learned that she was the one who had set the trap. And perhaps he had abducted she as revenge for the injury to his foot. Panic ensued. Inspector Nakamura immediately reported the abduction to headquarters and ordered a citywide search for the Hashiba family car. Fortunately, they knew the make, model, and license plate number, so they had plenty of leads. Star called the school and police headquarters every half hour for updates, but hour after hour passed with no news of she. Then, in the early afternoon, a young man in a shabby suit and a fedora appeared at the Hashiba residence and said something strange. I was asked by your chauffeur to bring this back. He said something came up and asked me to return the car. I've parked it inside the gate, so please check and take it. A secretary relayed the message, and Star and Kondo rushed to the entrance to inspect the car. It was indeed the Hashiba family car, but it was empty. She had been abducted. Look, there's a strange envelope here. Kondo picked up an envelope from the car seat. It was addressed simply to Mr. Star Hashiba, personal and confidential. There was no return address. What's this? Star opened the envelope and read the chilling message inside. I received the 6 diamonds last night, as promised. They are truly magnificent gems, and I will treasure them as part of my collection. However, I have a score to settle. Someone set a trap in your garden, injuring my foot, an injury that will take 10 days to heal. I am entitled to compensation for my damages. Therefore, I have taken your son, she, as hostage. She is the one who set that cursed trap. This is only fair retribution, wouldn't you agree? Now, regarding compensation for damages, I demand the cannon statue in your possession. Yesterday, I had the unexpected pleasure of viewing your art collection, and I was astounded by its magnificence. Among the pieces, the cannon statue, a Kamakura period sculpture attributed to an Amy, particularly caught my eye. It is truly a national treasure, and as an art enthusiast, I desperately desire it. I decided then and there that I must have this statue. Therefore, 3 of my associates will visit your residence tonight at 10 p.m. Please allow them into the art room without resistance. They will pack the cannon statue and transport it by truck. Your son, she, will be returned to you in exchange for the statue. You have my word as 20 Faces. Do not inform the police. Do not follow the truck. If you do, you will never see your son again. I trust you will accept my offer. As a sign of your agreement, leave your main gate open until 10 p.m. tonight. I will arrive accordingly. 20 Faces. To Mr. Star Hashiba. What an outrageous demand. Star and Kondo clenched their fists in frustration, but with she held hostage, there seemed to be no other choice. They reluctantly agreed to the thief's terms. They apprehended the young man who had delivered the car and questioned him thoroughly, but he knew nothing about the thief. He had simply been paid a small fee for the delivery. The boy detective. After dismissing the young man, a meeting was held in a secluded room to discuss what to do. Star and his wife, Kondo, and Sanai, who had been rushed back from school by a school staff member, participated. There was no time to waste. They had only 8 or 9 hours until 10 p.m. I wouldn't care about anything else. Diamonds can be replaced with money, but I'm reluctant to part with the cannon statue. I can't bear to let such a national treasure fall into the hands of a thief. I consider that sculpture to be more than just a personal possession. It belongs in our family's art room, but it's part of Japan's artistic heritage. Star was not solely focused on his son, however. His wife was consumed with worry for she. But if we don't give him the statue, who knows what will happen to our son? No matter how precious a piece of art, it can't compare to a human life. Please don't call the police. Please agree to the thief's demands. She vividly imagined she crying alone in some dark, unknown basement. She couldn't wait for 10 p.m. She wished she could exchange the statue for she right away. Yes, of course, we want she back, but I'm not happy about handing over a priceless work of art to a thief after he's already stolen our diamonds. Kondo, is there any other way? Indeed. If we inform the police, the thief will find out, so we must keep this letter secret until 10 p.m. tonight. But what about a private detective? The old man suggested. Yes, there are private detectives. But can a private investigator handle such a major case? I hear there's a brilliant detective in Tokyo, Kondo said, tilting his head thoughtfully. Sanai suddenly spoke up. Father, you mean Kogoro Akechi? He's a famous detective who has solved many cases the police couldn't. He'd be the perfect match for 20 Faces. Yes, that's the one, Kogoro Akechi. I've heard he's quite remarkable. He would be a formidable opponent for 20 Faces. Yes, I've heard of him, too. Let's discreetly contact him and consult with him. A professional might have an idea we haven't thought of. They decided to entrust the case to Kogoro Akechi. Kondo immediately looked up Akechi's number in the phone book and called. A childish voice answered. The detective is currently abroad on an important case and we don't know when he'll return. However, his assistant, Kobayashi, is available. If he's acceptable, he can come right away. Oh, I see. But it's a very difficult case. I don't know if an assistant. Kondo hesitated. His assistant is just as capable as the detective himself. You can trust him completely. In any case, he can come and assess the situation. The voice on the other end was bright and energetic. All right, then. Please tell him to come immediately. However, it's crucial that the thief doesn't learn we've hired a detective. A life is at stake. Please be discreet and come unnoticed. Of course, I understand. Thus, it was arranged for the detective's assistant, Kobayashi, to visit. About 10 minutes after the phone call, a charming young boy arrived at the Hashiba residence and asked for someone to let him in. A secretary answered the door. I'm Shie's friend. The boy introduced himself. She isn't here, the secretary replied. I thought so, the boy said knowingly. Then, could I speak to his father? I have a message from my father. My name is Kobayashi. Hearing this from the secretary, Star, recognizing the name, had the boy shown into the reception room. Here Star entered. He saw a boy of about 12 or 13 with rosy cheeks and large eyes. Mr. Hashiba? It's a pleasure to meet you. I'm Kobayashi, from the Akechi Detective Agency. I received your call. The boy spoke clearly and confidently. Oh, you're Kobayashi's errand boy? It's a complicated case, you see. I'd prefer to speak to Kobayashi himself. The boy raised his hand, interrupting Star. No, I am Kobayashi Yoshio. There are no other assistants. Oh, you are? Star was surprised, and at the same time, strangely amused. Could this little boy really be a famous detective? But his expression and manner of speaking were remarkably self-assured. He decided to consult with the boy. So, you were the one on the phone who claimed to be a skilled detective? Yes. I'm in charge of all cases while the detective is away. The boy was brimming with confidence. You said earlier you were Shie's friend. How did you know Shie's name? I wouldn't be much of a detective if I couldn't figure that out. I read about your family in a business magazine and kept a clipping. When you called and mentioned a life was in danger, I assumed either Sanai or she was missing. It seems my assumption was correct. And isn't the thief involved in this case the notorious 20 Faces? Kobayashi's questions were sharp and to the point. Star was impressed. Perhaps this boy truly was a detective. He summoned Kondo to the reception room, and the two of them explained the details of the case to the boy. Kobayashi listened intently, interjecting with brief questions. When they were finished, he asked to see the Canon statue. Star led him to the art room. After viewing the statue, they returned to the reception room, where the boy sat in silence for a while, his eyes closed in thought. Suddenly, he opened his eyes wide and declared enthusiastically, "I've devised a plan. If the opponent is a magician, we'll become magicians ourselves. It's a risky plan, but we can't solve cases without taking risks. I've done even more dangerous things before." "That's reassuring. But what kind of plan is it?" "Well," Kobayashi leaned close to Star and whispered something in his ear. "What? You?" Star's eyes widened in disbelief at the audacious proposal. "Yes. It might seem difficult, but we've tested this method before. Years ago, the detective used this very trick to outsmart the French phantom thief, Arsène Lupin. But won't she be in danger?" "He'll be fine. It might be dangerous if we were dealing with a petty thief, but 20 Faces wouldn't break his promise. He said he'd return she in exchange for the statue, so she should be back here safe and sound before any danger arises. And if not, we'll figure something out. Don't worry. I'm a child, but I don't take unnecessary risks. I'm still hesitant to let you undertake such a dangerous task while Akechi is away." "Ha ha ha. You don't know how we live. Detectives are like police officers. It's an honor to die in the line of duty. But this isn't that kind of job. It's not as dangerous as it sounds. All you have to do is pretend not to notice. Even if you don't agree, I'm going to carry out my plan. I'll take care of everything." Hashiba and Kondo were overwhelmed by the boy's enthusiasm. After a long discussion, they finally decided to proceed with Kobayashi's plan, the miracle of the cannon statue. Now, let's skip ahead to the events of that night. At 10 p.m. sharp, as promised, 3 of 20 Faces ruffians entered the Hashiba residence through the open main gate. Ignoring the secretaries at the entrance, the thieves declared, "We've come to collect the promised item," and, as if they had been briefed, proceeded directly to the art room without hesitation. Star and Kondo were waiting at the entrance to the art room. Star addressed one of the thieves. "You're sure about this exchange? You've brought my son?" "Don't worry," the thief replied rudely. "The kid's already here, near the gate. But don't bother looking for him. We've hidden him where you won't find him until we've taken the statue. We can't take any chances." With that, the 3 men barged into the art room. The room was built like a storehouse. Under the dim light, glass display cases lined the walls, showcasing a collection of swords, armor, ornaments, decorative boxes, folding screens, and hanging scrolls. In a corner stood a large, rectangular glass case, about 1.5 meters tall, containing the cannon statue. The dark wooden statue, about half the size of a human, sat on a lotus pedestal. It must have once been covered in gold leaf, but now it was mostly dark, and the folds of its robe were worn and torn in places. Yet, it was clearly the work of a master craftsman. The serene and gentle expression on its face made it seem as if it might smile at any moment. Even a hardened criminal would feel compelled to bow before it. Perhaps feeling a twinge of guilt, the 3 thieves avoided looking directly at the statue's benevolent face and quickly set to work. No time to waste. "Let's hurry." One of them spread out a dirty cloth, and another wrapped it around the glass case, quickly concealing the statue. "Careful. Don't tilt it. Heave ho. Heave ho." With boisterous shouts, the 3 men carried the bundle out of the room. Star and Kondo watched them load it onto a truck, making sure the thieves didn't leave without she. Finally, the truck engine roared to life, and the vehicle began to move. "Where's she?" "We're not letting you leave without him. If you try to leave, we'll call the police." Kondo shouted desperately, "Don't worry. Look over there, by the entrance. He's already there." They turned and saw 2 figures standing near the entrance, one tall and one small. While Star and Kondo were distracted, the truck sped away, disappearing into the night. They hurried towards the figures at the entrance. "Oh, it's just that beggar and his child. I guess they got something to eat." Indeed, the 2 figures looked like a beggar and his child. Both wore ragged, dirty clothes and had their faces covered with thin towels. "What are you doing here? You can't just wander in here." Kondo scolded them. The adult beggar let out a strange laugh. "Eh, just as promised." Then, he suddenly ran off, disappearing like the wind through the gate. "Father, it's me," the child beggar said. He pulled off the towel covering his face and threw off the ragged clothes, revealing a familiar school uniform and a pale face. It was she. "What happened?" Why are you dressed like this? Hashiba asked, grabbing Shi's hand. It was that 20 faces guy. He made me wear these clothes. He gagged me so I couldn't talk. So, the adult beggar must have been 20 faces himself. Disguised as a beggar, he had discreetly observed the removal of the statue, returned Shi as promised, and escaped. What a daring disguise. As a beggar, he could loiter around the gate without arousing suspicion. A typical 20 faces tactic. She was safe. He said he'd been confined to a basement, but hadn't been mistreated and had been given plenty to eat. The Hashiba family's greatest worry was lifted. The reader can imagine their joy. Meanwhile, 20 faces, still disguised as a beggar, dashed out of the Hashiba estate and slipped into a dark side street. He quickly shed the beggar's clothes to reveal another disguise underneath, an elderly man in a brown workman's outfit. His hair was white, his face wrinkled. He looked every bit a retired gentleman in his 60s. Adjusting his appearance, he grabbed a bamboo cane he had hidden and shuffled away, hunched over. Even if Hashiba had broken their agreement and sent pursuers, there was no chance of being recognized now. A truly clever and meticulous plan. Reaching the main street, the old man hailed a taxi. After riding in a random direction for 20 minutes, he switched to another cab and headed to his real hideout. The cab stopped at the entrance to Tormagahara. The old man got out and hobbled across the dark field. So, 20 Faces' lair was in Tormagahara. On the edge of the field, hidden in a cedar grove, stood an old, dilapidated Western-style house. The old man knocked on the door, 3 knocks, a pause, then 2 more. This must have been a signal to his associates, because the door opened, and one of the thieves who had stolen the statue peeked out. The old man entered without a word and proceeded to the back of the house. At the end of a hallway was a large room, probably once grand, where the glass case containing the statue, still wrapped in cloth, sat in the dim, reddish light of a naked candle. Excellent work, men. You did well. This is your reward. Go and enjoy yourselves. He gave each of the 3 men several thousand-yen notes and dismissed them. Then, he slowly unwrapped the cloth from the glass case, picked up the candle, and stood before the statue, opening the glass doors. Kanon-sama, my skills are truly something, aren't they? Yesterday, 2 million yen worth of diamonds. Today, a national treasure. At this rate, my grand museum project will soon be complete. Ha ha ha. Kanon-sama, you're beautifully crafted. Almost lifelike. But then, readers, just as he finished speaking, a truly terrifying miracle occurred, just as he had described. The wooden cannon's right arm extended forward, and in its hand, instead of the usual lotus stem, it held a pistol, aimed squarely at the thief's chest. A wooden statue couldn't move on its own. Was it some kind of mechanical automaton, like a human-shaped machine? But such mechanisms couldn't exist in a Kamakura-era statue. How could this miracle have happened? But 20 Faces had no time to ponder such things. He cried out, staggering backward, instinctively raising his hands in surrender. The trapdoor. Even the notorious phantom thief was shaken. He wasn't afraid of being confronted by a human with a pistol, but a centuries-old cannon statue suddenly coming to life was a different story. He was more than surprised, he was terrified. It was like a nightmare, or an encounter with a ghost, a primal, inexplicable fear. The usually audacious 20 Faces turned pale, stumbled backward, placed the candle on the floor as if apologizing, and raised his hands high. Then, another terrifying thing happened. The cannon stepped down from the lotus pedestal and stood on the floor. Still aiming the pistol, it took 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps closer to the thief. Who are you? 20 Faces stammered, his voice a whimper. I've come to retrieve the Hashiba diamonds. Hand them over now, and I'll spare your life, the statue commanded in a deep, resonant voice. Astonishingly, the statue spoke. So, you're one of Hashiba's men. You disguised yourself as a statue to find my hideout. Realizing his opponent was human, the thief regained some of his composure. But the inexplicable fear hadn't completely vanished. The statue was too small for a human in disguise. Standing, it was only the height of a 12 or 13-year-old child. And this miniature figure was speaking in a deep, resonant voice like an old man. It was incredibly unnerving. And what if I refused to hand over the diamonds? The thief asked cautiously, trying to gauge his opponent's reaction. Then you forfeit your life. This isn't a toy pistol like the ones you use, the cannon replied. It seemed to know that the white-haired old man was actually 20 Faces in disguise. Perhaps it had overheard his earlier conversation with his associates. Want me to prove it's not a toy? The cannon's right hand moved slightly. A deafening bang. A window shattered. The pistol had fired a real bullet. The miniature cannon glanced at the shattered glass, quickly re-aimed the pistol, and grinned, its face dark like an Indian's. A wisp of blue smoke curled from the barrel of the pistol, still pointed at the thief's chest. 20 Faces was terrified of this small, dark-faced figure. Such a reckless individual was unpredictable. He might actually shoot. Even if he could dodge the bullet, another loud bang would attract the attention of the neighbors. All right, I'll return the diamonds, the thief conceded. He went to a large desk in the corner of the room, opened a hidden drawer in one of the legs, and retrieved the 6 gems. He returned, holding them in his palm, the diamonds glittering with rainbow hues in the candlelight. Here. Take them. The miniature cannon extended its left hand and took the diamonds. Then, it chuckled in its deep, resonant voice. Ha ha ha. Very sensible. Even the great 20 Faces values his life, it seems. Yes, I admit defeat. The thief bit his lip in frustration. By the way, who are you? I'm surprised anyone could outsmart 20 Faces. Tell me your name, for posterity's sake. Ha ha ha. I'm flattered by your compliment. My name? You'll find out soon enough, when you're in jail. The police will tell you. The cannon, still holding the pistol, backed toward the exit. The hideout had been located, the diamonds recovered. All that remained was to safely leave this dilapidated house and contact the nearby police. Dear readers, you've probably already guessed who was disguised as the cannon. Kobayashi had achieved a brilliant victory against 20 Faces. He must have been overjoyed. What an accomplishment for a boy. A feat beyond the capabilities of most adults. But just as he was about to leave the room, a strange laugh echoed through the air. 20 Faces, still disguised as the old man, was laughing uproariously. Oh, readers, it's not over yet. This is the notorious phantom thief we're talking about. He might be feigning defeat, but who knows what tricks he has up his sleeve. What's so funny? Kobayashi stopped and stood on guard. Nothing. It's just that, you're a child using grown-up words, and it's so amusing. Ha ha ha, the thief finally managed to say between laughs. You see, I've figured out who you are. Not many people can outsmart 20 Faces. I immediately thought of Kogoro Akechi. But then I realized that's impossible. You're a child. And the only child who knows Akechi's methods is Akechi's boy assistant. What was his name? Kobayashi Yoshio? Ha ha ha. Did I guess right? Kobayashi was startled that the thief had seen through his disguise. But now that his mission was accomplished, it didn't matter if his identity was known. The name doesn't matter, but you're right, I'm a child. But it's rather humiliating for the great 20 Faces to be defeated by a child, isn't it? Ha ha ha, Kobayashi retorted, you're a cute kid. So, you think you've won, do you? Just admit defeat. The statue you stole came to life, and your diamonds were taken back. You still think you haven't lost? Yes. I never lose. And what do you intend to do about it? This. Suddenly, the floor beneath Kobayashi's feet disappeared. He felt himself falling through the air. Then, in the next instant, he saw sparks and felt a sharp pain as he landed hard on something. Oh, what a blunder. He had been standing on a trapdoor. The thief had pressed a hidden button on the wall, releasing the latch and opening a gaping hole into darkness. Lying in pain at the bottom of the dark pit, unable to move, Kobayashi heard 20 Faces mocking laughter from above. Ha ha ha. That must have hurt, little boy. Too bad. Think carefully down there about just how powerful your enemy is. Ha ha ha. You're a little too young to take on 20 Faces. Ha ha ha. The 7 tools. Kobayashi lay motionless in the darkness of the pit for about 20 minutes. He'd landed hard on his back and the pain prevented him from moving. Meanwhile, 20 Faces, after showering him with insults, had closed the trapdoor. There seemed to be no hope of escape. He was trapped. If the thief didn't bring him food, he would starve to death in this unknown basement, alone and forgotten. How could a young boy endure such a terrifying ordeal? Most boys would be crying in despair from loneliness and fear, but Kobayashi didn't cry or despair. He still didn't believe he had lost to 20 faces. When the pain in his back finally subsided, the first thing he did was reach for the small canvas bag he carried slung over his shoulder, beneath his disguise. "Pippo, are you all right?" he whispered, stroking the bag. "Something small moved inside." "Good, you weren't hurt. As long as I have you, I'm not afraid." After confirming Pippo's safety, Kobayashi sat up in the darkness, took the bag off his shoulder, and pulled out a penlight. In its beam, he located the 6 diamonds and the pistol scattered on the floor. He put them in the bag and carefully checked its contents to make sure nothing else was missing. His 7 detective tools were all there. It was said that the legendary warrior, Musashibo Benkei, carried 7 tools of war on his back. Kobayashi's 7 detective tools weren't weapons, and they could all fit in his 2 hands, but they were just as useful as Benkei's first, the penlight. Light was essential for nighttime investigations. It could also be used to signal. Then, a small multitool with a saw, scissors, an awl, and other blades, all folded neatly inside. Next, a sturdy rope ladder made of silk cord that folded small enough to fit in his palm. Other essential items included a pen-shaped telescope, a watch, a magnet, a small notebook and pencil, and the small pistol he had used to threaten the thief. And last, but not least, Pippo. Illuminated by the penlight, it was a pigeon. The cute bird huddled quietly in a separate compartment of the bag. "Pippo, it's cramped, but bear with it a little longer. It'll be bad if that scary man finds you." Kobayashi stroked Pippo's head, and the pigeon cooed in response. Pippo was the boy detective's mascot. He believed that as long as he had Pippo with him, he could overcome any danger. But Pippo was more than just a mascot, he had another important role. Communication was crucial for detective work. The police had radio-equipped cars, but unfortunately, a private detective didn't have access to such things. A small, concealable radio transmitter would be ideal, but such devices were unavailable, so Kobayashi had come up with the ingenious idea of using a carrier pigeon. It was a childish idea, but sometimes a child's innocent ideas could achieve surprising results. "I have my radio and my airplane in my bag," Kobayashi would sometimes say proudly. Indeed, his carrier pigeon was both a radio and an airplane. After checking his tools, Kobayashi put the bag back under his disguise. Then he used the penlight to examine the basement. The basement was about 10 tatami mats in size, a windowless concrete room that probably once served as a storage space. He looked for stairs and found a wooden ladder pulled up against the ceiling. Not only was the entrance sealed, but the stairs were removed as well. A truly cautious approach. Escape seemed impossible. In the corner of the room was a broken chair with a rolled-up blanket on it. There was nothing else in the room. It was like a prison cell. Looking at the chair, Kobayashi had a realization. This is where Shihashiba was kept. He must have slept on this chair. He felt a pang of sympathy and went to examine the chair, poking the cushion and unfolding the blanket. "Well, I guess I'll take a nap on this bed, too." The audacious boy detective lay down on the chair. Everything would have to wait until daybreak. He needed to conserve his energy. It was a sensible idea, but the ability to calmly take a nap in such dire circumstances was something most boys couldn't do. "Pippo, let's sleep and have a good dream." Kobayashi hugged the bag containing Pippo and closed his eyes in the darkness. Soon, the sound of peaceful breathing filled the basement. The carrier pigeon. Kobayashi woke up, startled by the unfamiliar surroundings. He quickly remembered the events of the previous night. "Oh, right, I'm locked in the basement. But it's strangely bright in here." The bare concrete walls and floor were dimly lit. Daylight couldn't reach the basement, so he looked around and noticed a small, barred window high up near the ceiling, which he hadn't seen last night. The window was only about 30 centimeters square, and high up, almost 3 meters above the floor. But from the outside, it must be close to ground level. "I wonder if I could escape through that window." Kobayashi got up and went to look out the window. The glass was broken, and he thought he might be able to call for help. He pushed the chair under the window and climbed on it, but the window was still too high. He couldn't lift the heavy chair to stand it upright, and there was nothing else to use as a step stool. So, had he discovered the window only to be unable to reach it? No, readers, don't worry. This is where his rope ladder came in handy. One of the boy detective's 7 tools was about to prove its worth. He took the silk rope ladder from his bag, swung it like a cowboy's lasso, and threw the hooked end towards the window bars. After 3 or 4 failed attempts, he felt a satisfying clink as the hook caught on one of the bars. The rope ladder was simple, a 5-meter-long silk cord with knots tied every 20 centimeters, providing footholds. Kobayashi wasn't as strong as an adult, but when it came to gymnastics, he was second to none. He quickly climbed the ladder and reached the window bars. To his disappointment, however, the bars were firmly embedded in the concrete. His multi-tool wouldn't be enough to remove them. So, how about calling for help through the window? No, that was unlikely to work, either. Outside the window was an overgrown garden, and beyond that, a hedge. Beyond the hedge was a vast, empty field, with no roads. He could wait for someone, perhaps a child, to come playing in the field and call for help, but it was doubtful his voice would carry that far. Besides, if he shouted that loudly, 20 faces would hear him before anyone in the field. No, that was too risky. Kobayashi was disappointed. But his efforts weren't entirely in vain. Until now, he hadn't known where he was, but thanks to the view from the window, he now knew his location. You might think it strange that he could determine his location just by looking out the window. But he did. He was very lucky. In the distance, beyond the field, he saw a unique structure, one that existed only in this particular part of Tokyo. Those familiar with Tokyo will recognize the large concrete building in Toamagahara that resembles a row of giant, half-buried kamaboko fish cakes. It was a perfect landmark. Kobayashi memorized the building's position relative to the thief's hideout and climbed down the rope ladder. He hurriedly opened his bag, took out his notebook, pencil, and magnet, and, checking his bearings, drew a map. He now knew for certain that the building was located on the north side of Toamagahara, towards the west. His magnet, another of his 7 tools, had proved useful. He checked his watch. It was just past 6 in the morning. The house was quiet, so 20 faces might still be asleep. It's too bad. I've found 20 faces' hideout. I know exactly where it is, but I can't capture him. Kobayashi clenched his fists in frustration. If only I could shrink like a fairy in a story and fly out of that window. Then I could go straight to police headquarters, bring the officers back here, and capture 20 faces. He sighed, lost in this fanciful thought. But this whimsical idea sparked a brilliant plan. I'm such an idiot. I can do that. I have Pippo, my airplane. His face flushed with excitement, and his heart pounded. With trembling hands, he wrote a note describing the location of the thief's hideout and the fact that he was trapped in the basement. He tore the page from his notebook and folded it carefully. Then, he took Pippo out of the bag, inserted the note into the message capsule attached to Pippo's leg, and closed the capsule securely. Pippo, it's your turn to be a hero. Be brave. No playing along the way, understand? Now, fly out of that window and go to Mrs. Akechi. Pippo perched on Kobayashi's hand, blinked his bright eyes, and listened intently. As if understanding his master's instructions, he flapped his wings powerfully, circled the basement a few times, and flew out the windows. In 10 minutes, Pippo will reach Mrs. Akechi. She'll be surprised when she reads my message, but she'll immediately call the police. How long will it take the officers to get here? 30 minutes. 40. Either way, the thief will be captured within an hour, and I'll be free from this hole. Kobayashi gazed at the empty sky where Pippo had disappeared, lost in thought. He was so engrossed in his thoughts that he didn't notice the trapdoor opening above him. Kobayashi, what are you doing down there? 20 Faces' voice, like a clap of thunder, startled Kobayashi. He looked up and saw the thief's white-haired head peering down at him from the square opening in the ceiling. Had 20 Faces seen Pippo fly away? Kobayashi stared at the thief, his heart pounding. A strange bargain. Mr. Boy Detective, how did you sleep last night? Ha ha ha. What's that black rope hanging from the window? Ah, your trusty rope ladder, I see. Very clever indeed. But you won't be able to remove those bars, you know. Standing there staring out the window won't get you anywhere. The thief sneered. Good morning. I wasn't trying to escape. I'm quite comfortable here. I like this room. I plan to stay for a while. Kobayashi wasn't intimidated. His heart had been pounding, fearing that the thief had seen Pippo fly away, but 20 Faces didn't seem to have noticed, so he felt relieved. Once Pippo reached the detective agency, everything would be all right. It didn't matter what 20 Faces said. He knew he would have the last laugh. Comfortable, you say? Ha ha ha. Even more impressive. A worthy assistant to Akechi, indeed. Quite the brave little fellow. But Kobayashi, aren't you a little concerned? You must be hungry by now. Do you intend to starve yourself to death? What was he talking about? He had no idea the police would soon arrive, thanks to Pippo. Kobayashi ignored him, inwardly amused. Ha ha ha. You seem a bit down. I'll let you in on a little secret. You can pay for your meals. If you do, I'll have the cook bring you a delicious breakfast. No, not with money. The price of your meal is that pistol you have. If you hand it over, I'll have breakfast sent down immediately. The thief wanted the pistol. What a clever way to get it, offering it as payment for a meal. Kobayashi was confident he'd be rescued soon, so he didn't mind skipping a meal. But he thought it best to feign concern, lest he arouse suspicion. And he had no further use for the pistol anyway. All right, I accept your offer. The truth is, I'm starving. He pretended to be reluctant. The thief, taking the act at face value, gloated, "You foo-foo. Even the boy detective can't withstand hunger. Very well, I'll have your meal sent down right away," and closed the trapdoor. Kobayashi could faintly hear him giving instructions to the cook. Perhaps preparing the meal took longer than expected, because it was another 20 minutes before 20 faces reappeared. "Here's your breakfast. But first, I'll take that payment. Put the pistol in this basket." A small basket attached to a rope was lowered down. Kobayashi put the pistol in the basket. It was quickly pulled up, and when it was lowered again, it contained 3 steaming rice balls, some ham, a raw egg, and a bottle of tea. Quite a feast for a prisoner. Enjoy your meal. As long as you pay, I'll keep you well fed. For lunch, I'll take a diamond. It pains me to part with them, but one at a time. After all, even priceless jewels can't satisfy hunger. I intend to get them all back, one by one. Ha ha ha. Being a hotelier can be quite entertaining. 20 faces seemed to be enjoying this strange bargain. But did he really think he could retrieve the diamonds? Wouldn't he be captured before that? Kobayashi's triumph. 20 faces was squatting by the trapdoor, gleefully tossing the pistol he'd just acquired in his hand. He was about to taunt Kobayashi further when he heard hurried footsteps coming down the stairs. The cook appeared, his face pale with terror. "It's terrible. There are 3 cars outside, full of police. I saw them from the 2nd floor window. They've stopped outside the gate. We have to escape." Pippo had fulfilled his mission. The police had arrived even sooner than Kobayashi expected. Hearing the commotion from the basement, he was overjoyed. Even 20 faces was stunned by this unexpected turn of events. "What?" he exclaimed, jumping to his feet. Forgetting to close the trapdoor, he ran towards the front entrance, but it was too late. Loud banging echoed from the front door. He looked through the peephole and saw uniformed police officers outside. Damn it. 20 faces ran towards the back door, but before he reached it, he heard more banging. The hideout was completely surrounded. "Boss, it's no use. There's no way out," the cook cried out in despair. "The 2nd floor." Then, 20 faces decided to hide in the attic. "It's no use. They'll find us," the cook wailed, but 20 faces grabbed him and dragged him up the stairs to the attic. As soon as they disappeared up the stairs, the front door crashed open, and several police officers stormed in. Almost simultaneously, the back door was forced open, and more officers entered. Leading them was Inspector Nakamura of the Metropolitan Police Department, known for his tenacity. He stationed guards at key points and ordered the remaining officers to search every room here. "This is the basement," an officer shouted, standing over the trapdoor. Several officers gathered and peered into the dimly lit basement. One of them spotted Kobayashi. "There he is." "Is that you, Kobayashi?" "Yes." "Hurry and lower the ladder." Meanwhile, the officers searched every room downstairs but found no sign of the thief. "Kobayashi, do you know where 20 faces went?" Inspector Nakamura asked, as the boy, still in his strange disguise, emerged from the basement. "He was just here by the trapdoor. He couldn't have escaped. He must be on the 2nd floor." Just as Kobayashi finished speaking, a shout came from upstairs. "Come quickly. We've got him. We've captured the thief." The officers rushed up the stairs to the attic. A single small window provided the only light, making the room dim, like twilight. "He's here. Help me," an officer shouted. He was struggling with a white-haired, white-bearded old man. The old man was putting up a good fight, and the officer was barely holding him. 2 or 3 officers quickly joined the fray. Then 4, 5, 6 more piled on. Subduing the thief. Resistance was futile. The old man was quickly restrained. As the white-haired man slumped against the wall, Inspector Nakamura brought Kobayashi upstairs for identification. "This is 20 Faces, isn't it?" "Yes," Kobayashi replied without hesitation. "That's him. 20 Faces, disguised as an old man. Take him to the car. And be careful." The officers dragged the old man down the stairs. "Kobayashi, that was brilliant. When Akechi returns from abroad, he'll be amazed. Especially since it was 20 Faces, a formidable opponent. Tomorrow, your name will be known throughout Japan." Inspector Nakamura shook Kobayashi's hand gratefully. Thus, the battle ended in Kobayashi's victory. The statue had been saved, and the diamonds were safely in his bag. A complete and utter victory. Despite his elaborate schemes, the thief had gained nothing. His prisoner had been rescued, and he himself was now captured. "It feels like a dream. I can't believe I defeated 20 Faces," Kobayashi said, his face pale with excitement. But in the excitement of the capture, the boy detective had forgotten something. What had happened to 20 Faces' cook? Where had he disappeared to? It was strange that he hadn't been found during the thorough search of the house. He couldn't have had time to escape. If the cook had escaped, 20 Faces would have escaped too. Was he still hiding somewhere in the house? That seemed impossible. The thorough search by the numerous police officers couldn't have missed him. Readers, put down the book for a moment and consider the strange disappearance of the cook. What could it mean? A terrifying challenge. 2 hours after the capture at the abandoned house in Toramagahara, 20 Faces was being interrogated in a gloomy room at police headquarters. The sparsely furnished room contained only a single desk, where Inspector Nakamura sat facing the thief, still disguised as an old man. The thief, his hands cuffed behind his back, stood defiantly, refusing to speak. "Let's see your real face." The inspector stepped closer, grabbed the thief's white wig, and pulled it off, revealing a head of dark hair. Then, he ripped off the white beard. The thief's true face was exposed. My, you're not much to look at, are you?" The inspector made a strange face. The thief had a narrow forehead, short, messy eyebrows, beady eyes that darted nervously, a crooked nose, and thick, slack lips. An unsettling, almost barbaric appearance, with no trace of intelligence. As mentioned before, this thief possessed numerous faces, transforming himself into old men, young men, and even women, so no one, not even the police, knew his true appearance. What an ugly face. Could this barbaric visage also be a disguise? Inspector Nakamura felt a sense of unease. He stared at the thief and asked, "Is this your real face?" It was a strange question, but he couldn't help but ask. The thief remained silent, a smirk spreading across his slack lips. A chill ran down Inspector Nakamura's spine. He sensed something strange was about to happen, something he couldn't comprehend. He stepped closer to the thief and began prodding his face, as if examining a doll. He tugged at his eyebrows, pinched his nose, and poked his cheeks, but no matter how thoroughly he examined him, there was no sign of a disguise. It was shocking that the thief who had impersonated the handsome Shichi Hashiba could have such a monstrous face. "That tickles. Stop it. That tickles." The thief finally spoke. What childish words. Was he mocking the police by pretending to be simple-minded? Or could it be? The inspector stared at the thief again. A terrifying thought flashed through his mind. Could it be? It was too absurd, too impossible. But he had to be sure. "Who are you? Who are you, really?" he demanded. Another strange question. The thief replied as if he had been waiting for it. "I'm Torakichi Kinoshita. I'm a cook. Don't play dumb. You can't fool us with such nonsense. Tell the truth. You're the notorious 20 Faces." Instead of cowering, the thief burst into laughter. 20 Faces? Me? Ha ha ha. That's a good one. You think 20 Faces is a scrawny guy like me? You police have no sense. Haven't you figured it out yet? Inspector Nakamura paled. "Shut up. Don't lie. Such a thing is impossible. Kobayashi identified you as 20 Faces. Ha ha ha. That's where you're wrong. It's hilarious. I haven't done anything wrong. I'm just a cook. I don't know anything about this 20 faces. I'm Torakichi, the cook who was hired 10 days ago. If you don't believe me, ask my boss. Then why are you dressed as an old man? And why were you hiding in the attic? Well, I was suddenly grabbed, forced into these clothes, and a wig was put on my head. I don't really understand what happened. When the police arrived, my boss grabbed me and dragged me up to the attic. There's a hidden closet up there, full of disguises. He took out a police uniform and put it on. Then he put his old man clothes on me, shouted, "I've caught the thief," and held me down. Looking back, it was all a performance for your benefit. The attic is dark, you see. You couldn't see his face in all the commotion. I couldn't do anything. His incredibly strong Inspector Nakamura, his face pale and rigid, rang the bell on his desk. When another officer appeared, he ordered him to bring in the 4 officers who had guarded the front and back entrances of the abandoned house in Toamagahara. When the 4 officers arrived, the inspector glared at them. "Did anyone leave the house when you arrested this man? He might have been wearing a police uniform." "One officer did leave," one of the officers replied. "He shouted that the thief had been caught and told us to go upstairs. While we rushed to the stairs, he ran outside. Why didn't you report this sooner? Did you see his face? Even if he was wearing a police uniform, you should have been able to tell he was an imposter." The veins on the inspector's forehead bulged. "I didn't have time to see his face. He ran past me like the wind. I was suspicious, so I called out to him. He shouted back that he was going to make a phone call on your orders. Since it wasn't unusual for an officer to make a phone call, I didn't question him further. Besides, the thief had been captured, so I forgot all about it and didn't report it." It was a reasonable explanation. And it highlighted the cunning and meticulousness of the thief's plan. There was no doubt now. The ugly, barbaric-looking man standing before them wasn't 20 faces. He was just a cook. The inspector and the 4 officers stared at each other in stunned silence. They had caused such a commotion to capture a mere cook. "Oh, and before my boss left, he told me to give this to you." Torakichi opened his shirt and pulled out a crumpled piece of paper, handing it to the inspector. Inspector Nakamura snatched the paper, smoothed it out, and read it quickly. His face turned purple with rage. The note read, "Please give my regards to Kobayashi. He's a remarkable child. I'm quite fond of him. But even for the sake of the dear boy, I couldn't sacrifice myself. It pains me to disappoint him after his victory, but I thought I'd teach him a little lesson about the real world. Tell him to give up trying to catch me. He'll regret it if he persists. By the way, I'll give you a little preview of my plans. I feel a bit sorry for Mr. Hashiba. I won't torment him any longer. The truth is, I've set my sights on something bigger. You'll hear about it soon enough. Until we meet again. 20 faces. To Mr. Zenshir Nakamura." So, the battle between 20 faces and Kobayashi had ended, regrettably, in the thief's victory. And now 20 faces was mocking the Hashiba collection and boasting about some grand scheme. What did he mean? This time, even Kobayashi might not be able to stop him. They could only wait for Kogoro Akechi's return, which, thankfully, wouldn't be long. The confrontation between the great detective Kogoro Akechi and the phantom thief 20 Faces, a battle of wits, was about to begin. The art castle. About 4 kilometers south of Shuzenji Hot Springs on the Aizu Peninsula, nestled in the mountains along the Shimoda Highway, lies a remote village called Taniguchi. On the outskirts of the village, hidden in a forest, stood a peculiar, fortress-like mansion. It was surrounded by a high earthen wall topped with sharp iron spikes, resembling a bed of nails. Inside the wall was a moat, about 4 meters wide, filled with flowing water. It was deep enough to drown in. These were all precautions to keep people away. Even if someone managed to climb over the spiked wall, they would have to jump over the moat. In the center of this defensive perimeter stood a large white-walled building, with few windows, resembling a cluster of storehouses. It had no central tower, but it was an imposing structure. Locals called it the Kusakabe Castle, though, of course, it wasn't a real castle. There couldn't possibly be a castle in such a small village. So, who lived in this strangely fortified building? In the Warring States period, when there was no police force, such a thing might have been understandable, But in this day and age, not even the wealthiest person would live in such a heavily guarded residence. Who lives there? Travelers would ask, and the villagers would always reply, That's the crazy Kusakabe's castle. He's afraid of thieves, you see. A real eccentric. Keeps to himself. The Kusakabe family had been landowners in the area for generations, but by the time of the current head of the family, Salmon, the vast estate had been sold off, leaving only the castle-like mansion and the extensive collection of ancient paintings within. Salmon was a reclusive art collector, almost to the point of obsession. His collection focused on ancient paintings, including works by Sesh and Tanwai, masters whose names appeared even in elementary school textbooks. It was said he had amassed almost every major work by these old masters. Hundreds of paintings, most of which were masterpieces worthy of being designated national treasures, reportedly worth tens of billions of yen. This explained the fortress-like defenses of the Kusakabe mansion. Salmon treasured these paintings more than his own life. His constant worry was that they might be stolen. Even the moat and the spiked wall couldn't allay his fears. He eventually became so suspicious that he stopped associating even with the honest villagers, suspecting every visitor of being a potential art thief. Salmon spent his days shut up inside the mansion, admiring his collection, rarely venturing outside. Consumed by his passion for art, he never married or had children. He lived like a guardian of his paintings, and before he knew it, he was over 60 years old. He was, in essence, the eccentric lord of a castle of art. Today, as usual, Salmon sat in a secluded room within the white-walled, storehouse-like building, surrounded by his masterpieces, lost in thought. Warm sunlight streamed down outside, but inside the room, with its small, barred windows, it was cold and dim, like a prison cell. Master, excuse me. A letter has arrived. An elderly servant's voice called from outside the room. The vast mansion was staffed by only this old man and his wife. A letter? That's unusual. Bring it here. The heavy wooden door slid open, and the wrinkled old servant entered, carrying a letter. Salmon took the letter and examined the back, but strangely, there was no return address. I wonder who it's from. I don't recognize the handwriting. He opened the letter and read it. Master, what's wrong? Is it bad news? The servant exclaimed, alarmed by the change in Salmon's expression. His wrinkled, beardless face had turned ashen, his toothless lips trembled, and his small eyes, magnified by his spectacles, darted nervously. No, it's nothing. You wouldn't understand. Leave me. He dismissed the servant with a trembling voice, but it was anything but nothing. He was lucky he didn't faint. The letter contained these chilling words. Forgive this unsolicited communication from a stranger. However, even without an introduction, you are no doubt aware of my identity from the newspapers. To be brief, I have decided to acquire your collection of ancient paintings, in its entirety. I will arrive on the night of November 15th. I am informing you in advance so as not to alarm you with a sudden visit. 20 Faces. To Mr. Salmon Kusakabe. So, 20 Faces had set his sights on this art-obsessed recluse in the Aizu Mountains. It had been almost a month since he had escaped from his Toramagahara hideout disguised as a police officer. No one knew where he had been or what he had been doing. He had probably established a new hideout, gathered his associates, and plotted his next audacious heist. And his first target was the Kusakabe art castle, hidden deep in the mountains. The night of November 15th, that's tonight. What am I going to do? If 20 Faces is after my collection, it's as good as gone. He's a terrifying thief. The police couldn't stop him. The local police here are no match for him. I'm ruined. I'd rather die than lose my treasures. Salmon jumped to his feet and began pacing the room. I'm doomed. There's no escape. Tears streamed down his wrinkled face. Wait, what was that? I remember. Why didn't I think of it sooner? Heaven hasn't abandoned me yet. If I can just reach him, I might be saved. A spark of hope flickered in his eyes. Sarkuz. Where are you? He rushed out of the room, clapping his hands, calling for his servant. When Sarkuz appeared, alarmed by his master's frantic cries, Salmon ordered, quickly, bring me the Aizu Nippo. I think it was the day before yesterday's paper. Just bring me the last few days' worth. Hurry. Sarkuz rushed back with a stack of the local newspaper. Salmon frantically flipped through the pages, searching the social news section. In the November 13th edition, he found the following article. Kogoro Akechi arrives in Shuzenji. Kogoro Akechi, Japan's leading private detective, has returned from an extended trip abroad. He is currently staying at the Fujiya Inn in Shuzenji Hot Springs to rest and recuperate, and is expected to remain for 4 or 5 days. This is it. This is it. The only person who can stand against 20 faces is Akechi. Even his young assistant, Kobayashi, put up a good fight against him. Akechi will surely save me. I must get him here, no matter what. Salmon called for Sakuze's wife to help him change his clothes. He securely locked the door to the treasure room, ordered the 2 servants to stand guard, and hurried out of the mansion. He was going to Shuzenji Hot Springs, to the Fujiya Inn, to meet with Kogoro Akechi and ask for his help. The long-awaited detective, Kogoro Akechi, had finally returned. And by a stroke of luck, he was staying near the Kusakabe art castle, just as 20 Faces was about to attack. It was an answer to Salmon's prayers, the famous detective Kogoro Akechi. Salmon, dressed in a drab, mouse-grey kimono, practically ran down the long, sloping road to the Fujiya Inn, arriving around 1 p.m. Where is Mr. Kogoro Akechi? He inquired. He was told that Akechi had gone fishing in the nearby valley. So, accompanied by a maid, he had to make his way down the steep, treacherous path, through thick bamboo grass, to the bottom of the valley, where a clear stream gurgled. Large rocks dotted the stream, like stepping stones. On the largest and flattest of these rocks sat a man in a padded jacket, hunched over, gazing intently at the tip of his fishing rod. That's Mr. Akechi, the maid said, hopping from rock to rock and approaching the man. Sir, this gentleman has come a long way to see you. The man in the padded jacket turned around irritably. Don't shout. You'll scare the fish away. His hair was tousled, his gaze sharp, his face pale and taut, his nose high, his clean-shaven lips firm. It was Kogoro Akechi, just as he looked in the photographs. I'm Kusakabe, the old man said, offering his business card and bowing deeply. I have an urgent request. Akechi took the card but barely glanced at it. Is that so? What can I do for you? He asked, his attention still fixed on his fishing rod. Salmon dismissed the maid and, after she was gone, said, Sir, I received this letter today. He took 20 Faces' notice from his pocket and held it in front of the detective's face. Oh, it got away. Don't disturb me while I'm fishing. A letter, you say? What does that have to do with me? Akechi remained indifferent. Do you know the thief called 20 Faces? Salmon asked, his voice edged with impatience. 20 Faces? You say you received a letter from 20 Faces? The detective still seemed unconcerned, his eyes fixed on his fishing rod. Salmon sighed and read the notice aloud, explaining in detail the treasures hidden within the Kusakabe mansion. So you're the owner of that peculiar castle? Akechi finally turned his attention to the old man, seeming intrigued. Yes. Those paintings are more precious to me than life itself. Mr. Akechi, please help me, I beg you. And what do you want me to do? Come to my house immediately. Protect my treasures. Have you contacted the police? That would be the logical first step, rather than coming to me. No, you see, I'm putting my faith in you rather than the police. I believe you're the only detective who can stand against 20 Faces. Besides, the police station here is small, it would take time to bring in competent detectives. And 20 Faces is planning to attack tonight. There's no time to waste. It's truly providential that you're staying at this hot spring at this very moment. Sir, this is my earnest plea. Please help me. Salmon pleaded, his hands clasped together. If you insist, I'll accept your request. 20 Faces is my enemy, too. I've been waiting for him to reappear. Let's go to your house together. But first, I need to contact the police. I'll call them from the inn. We'll have 2 or 3 officers accompany us, just in case. You go ahead. I'll join you shortly with the officers. Akechi's voice suddenly became animated. He no longer seemed interested in fishing. Thank you. Thank you. I feel like I've gained 1,000,000 allies. Salmon, his heart lighter, thanked Akechi profusely. A night of anxiety. About 30 minutes after Salmon sped back to his castle in a hired car, Akechi and his entourage arrived. Accompanying Akechi, now smartly dressed in a dark suit, were 3 plainclothes detectives from the local police station. They introduced themselves to Salmon, presenting their official business cards. Salmon immediately led them to the treasure room and proudly displayed his collection of hanging scrolls, framed paintings, and boxes stacked on shelves, explaining the history and provenance of each piece. This is an astounding collection. I'm an art enthusiast myself and I often visit museums and temples to admire their treasures, but I've never seen so many historical masterpieces in one room. It's no wonder 20 Faces has taken an interest. I'm almost drooling myself. Akechi praised each painting with expert commentary, his knowledge of art so profound that it surprised even Salmon, deepening his respect for the detective. After an early dinner, they finalized their plan to protect the paintings. Akechi efficiently instructed the detectives. One was to stay inside the treasure room, one at the front gate, and one at the back gate, keeping watch throughout the night. If they saw anything suspicious, they were to blow a whistle. Once the detectives were in position, Akechi had Salmon lock the heavy wooden door to the treasure room from the outside. "I'll keep watch outside this door," Akechi declared, settling down in the hallway outside the door. "Are you sure this will work? Forgive my skepticism, but I've heard that 20 Faces is like a magician." "I'm still worried," Salmon said anxiously. "Don't worry. I've thoroughly inspected the room. The windows are securely barred, the walls are 30 centimeters thick, and one of the officers is inside the room, keeping watch. And I'll be right here, guarding the only entrance. We couldn't be more secure. You should go to bed and rest. There's nothing you can do here." Despite Akechi's reassurances, Salmon refused to leave. "No, I'll stay up with you. I wouldn't be able to sleep anyway." He sat down beside the detective. "Very well, if you insist. I appreciate the company. We can discuss art," Akechi said calmly, his composure unshaken. They began discussing ancient paintings, but Akechi did most of the talking, while Salmon fidgeted nervously, unable to focus on the conversation. To Salmon, it felt like an eternity before the clock finally struck midnight. Akechi occasionally called out to the detective inside the treasure room, and each time, he received a clear reply that all was well. "I'm getting sleepy," Akechi yawned. "Perhaps 20 Faces won't come tonight. He's not foolish enough to try to penetrate such tight security. How are you doing? Would you like a cigarette to stay awake? It's a luxury I often indulged in abroad." He offered Salmon a cigarette from his elegant case. "Do you really think he won't come?" Salmon asked, still anxious, taking the Egyptian cigarette. "Don't worry. He's not stupid. He knows I'm here, so he wouldn't dare to show up." They smoked in silence, each lost in thought. After they finished their cigarettes, Akechi yawned again. "I'm going to take a nap. You should rest, too. Don't worry, I'll be alert. They say a samurai sleeps with one ear open, but as a detective, I wake at the slightest sound. My mind never sleeps." He stretched out on the floor in front of the door and closed his eyes. Soon, he began to snore softly. Akechi's relaxed demeanor made Salmon even more nervous. He strained his ears, listening for the slightest sound. He thought he heard something. Was it his imagination? Or just the wind rustling through the trees? As he listened, the silence of the night seemed to deepen. His mind grew foggy, and a haze clouded his vision. Suddenly, he saw a dark figure in the haze, its eyes gleaming. "Mr. Akechi. A thief. A thief." He shook Akechi awake. "What is it? Don't be ridiculous. Where's the thief?" "You must have been dreaming," Akechi grumbled, without opening his eyes. Perhaps it had been a dream, or a hallucination. He looked around, but there was no one there. Embarrassed, Salmon sat back down and listened again. But his mind began to drift, and the haze returned, gradually thickening until it was as dark as a storm cloud. He felt as if he were sinking into a deep abyss and, before he knew it, he fell asleep. He dreamt vivid, disturbing dreams, as if descending into hell. When he finally woke up, he was startled to find it was already daylight. "I fell asleep. How could I have fallen asleep when I was so alert?" He was bewildered. Akechi was still asleep in the same position. Thank goodness. 20 Faces must have been afraid of Akechi and didn't come after all. Thank heavens. He breathed a sigh of relief and gently woke the detective. "Mr. Akechi, wake up. It's morning." Akechi opened his eyes and yawned. "Ah, I slept well. Ha ha ha. See? Nothing happened. The detectives on watch must be tired, too. It's safe now, so let's have them come in for breakfast and rest." "Yes, good idea. Open the door." Salmon took the key from his pocket, unlocked the door, and slid it open. He took one look inside the room and let out a blood-curdling scream. What is it? What's wrong? Akechi jumped up and looked inside. That. Salmon stammered, pointing a trembling finger into the room. Akechi looked inside, and his eyes widened. The old man's shock was understandable. The paintings, both those that had been hanging on the walls and those stored in boxes on the shelves, were gone. Every single one had vanished without a trace. And the detective who had been guarding the room? He lay sprawled on the tatami floor, snoring loudly. Mr. Akechi. Stolen. I. Salmon, his face a mask of despair, clutched at Akechi's jacket, almost hysterical. The devil's cunning. It had happened again. 20 Faces wasn't human, he was some kind of monster. How could he accomplish such impossible feats so easily? Akechi strode into the room and kicked the snoring detective in the side. He was furious at being outwitted. Hey, wake up. I didn't tell you to sleep. Look. Everything's gone. The detective groggily sat up, still half asleep. What's gone? I fell asleep. Where am I? He looked around the empty room in confusion. Pull yourself together. I know what happened. You were drugged. Think back. What happened last night? Akechi shook the detective roughly. Oh, you're Mr. Akechi. This is Kusakabe's art castle. Damn it. I was tricked. Yes, drugged. Last night, a dark figure crept up behind me and covered my nose and mouth with something, a strange, sweet smell. Then, everything went black. The detective's eyes finally focused, and he looked around the empty room in dismay. I thought so. The other detectives at the gates must have been drugged, too. Akechi hurried out of the room. A moment later, they heard him calling from the kitchen. Mr. Kusakabe, come here. Salmon and the detective followed the sound of Akechi's voice. Akechi stood at the entrance to the servants' quarters, pointing inside. The detectives at the gates are gone. And look at this. Sarkuz and his wife were lying bound and gagged in the corner of the room. The thief had tied up the servants to prevent them from interfering. Oh, dear. Mr. Akechi, what does this mean? Salmon cried, nearly frantic. His precious treasures, which he valued more than his own life, had vanished overnight. I don't know what to say. I underestimated 20 Faces. It was a mistake. A mistake. This is more than a mistake for me. What am I going to do? Famous detective. Famous detective. And look what happened. And we can't just leave Sarkuz and his wife like this. Officer, untie them. Remove their gags. Maybe they saw something. Salmon, distraught and feeling utterly betrayed by the detective's seeming incompetence, began giving orders as if he were the detective. Well, the old man's given you an order. Untie them, Akechi said to the detective, with a strange glint in his eye. The detective, who had been standing dazed, suddenly straightened up, took a length of rope from his pocket, and quickly tied up Salmon. What are you doing? Are you all crazy? Untie me. Untie those two over there. Not me. Salmon struggled, but the detective continued tying him up securely. You fool. Stop it. That hurts. Mr. Akechi, what are you smiling about? Tell him to stop. He's gone mad. Mr. Akechi, Salmon cried, bewildered. Had everyone gone insane? Why were they tying him up? And why was Akechi smiling? Sir, who are you calling for? Did you say Akechi? Akechi asked. Of course. Don't be absurd. Ha ha ha. Sir, are you feeling all right? There's no one named Akechi here. Salmon stared at him, dumbfounded. Have you met Kogoro Akechi before? No, but I've seen his photograph. A photograph? That's not very reliable, is it? Do you mean to say I resemble him? Salmon was speechless. Sir, you seem to have forgotten what kind of person 20 Faces is. He's a master of disguise, remember? You're, the truth dawned on Salmon, and his face turned ashen. Ha ha. Have you finally figured it out? No. That's impossible. I saw it in the newspaper, the Aizu Nippo. It said, Detective Akechi arrives in Shuzenji, and the maid at the Fujiya Inn confirmed it. There's no mistake. But there is a mistake. Because Kogoro Akechi hasn't returned from abroad yet. Newspapers don't print false information. But this time, they did. One of the reporters in the social news department fell for our trick and submitted a false article to the editor. But what about the detectives? Surely the police wouldn't be fooled by a fake Akechi. Salmon clung to the hope that the man before him was the famous detective, not the dreaded thief. Ha ha ha. Sir, are you still clinging to that delusion? You have poor circulation. Detectives? You mean these men? And the two at the gates? Ha ha ha. They're just my associates pretending to be detectives. Salmon couldn't deny the truth any longer. The man he had mistaken for Kogoro Akechi was, in fact, the master thief, 20 Faces. He had entrusted the protection of his treasures to 20 Faces himself. Sir, how did you like the Egyptian cigarette last night? Ha ha ha. Do you remember? It was drugged. I needed you to take a nap while my men moved the paintings to the truck. How did we get into the treasure room, you ask? Ha ha ha. Simple. I just borrowed the key from your pocket. 20 Faces spoke calmly, as if discussing the weather, but his overly polite tone only infuriated the old man. Well, we must be going. We'll take good care of your art collection, so don't worry. Goodbye. 20 Faces bowed politely and left with his men. Poor Salmon, shouting incoherently, tried to follow, but he was tied to a pillar and collapsed on the floor, gnashing his teeth and weeping in frustration and despair. The giant and the fiend. One afternoon, about 2 weeks after the incident at the art castle, a familiar figure appeared among the crowds on a platform at Tokyo Station. It was Yoshio Kobayashi, Akechi's boy assistant, dressed in a jumper and a matching cap, his shoes shining brightly. Kobayashi paced back and forth, clutching a rolled-up newspaper. The newspaper contained a startling article about 20 Faces, which we will discuss shortly. Kobayashi was at Tokyo Station to meet Akechi, who was finally returning from abroad. Akechi had been invited by a certain country to assist with an important case, which he had successfully resolved. He was returning as a conquering hero. Ordinarily, there would be a grand welcome from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and various organizations, but Akechi disliked such fanfare. Furthermore, as a detective, he preferred to avoid public attention. He had informed only his family of his arrival time, and his wife usually declined to meet him at the station, leaving it to Kobayashi. Kobayashi checked his watch. In 5 minutes, Akechi's train would arrive. It had been almost 3 months since they had last seen each other. He was filled with anticipation. Suddenly, a distinguished-looking gentleman approached him, a smile on his face. He wore a warm, mouse-grey overcoat and carried a cane. His hair and mustache were salt and pepper, and tortoiseshell glasses framed his plump, jovial face. "Excuse me, are you by any chance with Mr. Akechi?" the gentleman asked in a gentle voice. "Yes, I am," Kobayashi replied cautiously. "I'm Tsujino, from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I learned that Mr. Akechi is returning on this train, so I came to welcome him unofficially. I have some confidential matters to discuss with him." "Oh, I see. I'm Kobayashi, his assistant." Kobayashi took off his cap and bowed. "I've heard of you. In fact, I recognized you from your newspaper photograph. Your battle with 20 Faces was quite impressive. You're quite famous, you know. My children are big fans of yours." "Ha ha ha," Tsujino said, showering him with compliments. Kobayashi blushed. Speaking of 20 Faces, that incident in Shuzenji, impersonating Akechi, quite a daring move. And this morning's paper says he's planning to rob the National Museum. He's mocking the police. We can't let him get away with this. I've been eagerly awaiting Akechi's return just to deal with him. Yes, me too. I tried my best, but he was too much for me. I've been hoping Akechi-sensei would get revenge for me. Is that today's newspaper you have there? Yes. It has the article about 20 Faces' notice to rob the museum. Kobayashi opened the newspaper to the relevant page. Half of the social news section was devoted to 20 Faces. The article stated that the director of the National Museum had received an express letter from 20 Faces the previous day, announcing his intention to steal the entire museum's collection. As usual, the date of the heist was specified, December 10th. Only 9 days away. 20 Faces' audacious ambition seemed to have reached its peak. He was challenging the nation itself. Until now, he had targeted private collections. While reprehensible, such thefts were not unheard of. But robbing the National Museum was tantamount to stealing from the state. Had any thief in history ever attempted such a daring feat? It was an act of unprecedented audacity and recklessness, but was such a thing even possible? The museum was staffed by dozens of officials, guards, and police officers. And now, with this advance notice, security would be extremely tight. It was conceivable that the entire museum would be surrounded by police. Had 20 Faces gone mad? Or was he truly confident he could pull this off? Did he possess some diabolical plan beyond human comprehension? But enough about 20 Faces. They had to greet Akechi. Here comes the train. Even without Tsujino's warning, Kobayashi ran to the edge of the platform. He scanned the approaching train as it grew larger and larger. With a rush of air, the black steel box hurtled past. Faces flashed by in the windows. The train screeched to a halt. There, at the first-class exit, stood Akechi, dressed in his usual all-black attire, a black suit, black overcoat, and black fedora. He spotted Kobayashi and waved, a smile on his face. "Akechi-sensei, welcome back." Kobayashi rushed to his side. Akechi handed his luggage to a porter and stepped onto the platform, approaching Kobayashi. "Kobayashi, I've heard about your troubles. I read about it in the newspapers. I'm glad you're safe." It was the voice Kobayashi had longed to hear. His face flushed as he gazed at the detective, drawing closer. They clasped hands in a firm handshake. Just then, Tsujino approached Akechi, offering his card. "Mr. Akechi, I haven't had the pleasure of meeting you formally, but I am Tsujino. I heard from a certain source that you were returning on this train, so I came to speak with you about a confidential matter." Akechi took the card and studied it thoughtfully. Then, his expression brightened. Mr. Tsujino. Yes, I'm familiar with your name. I was planning to visit the Ministry of Foreign Affairs after I returned home and changed my clothes. Thank you for coming to meet me. I apologize for imposing on you after your long journey, but if it's not inconvenient, I'd like to discuss the matter over tea at the station hotel. I won't take up too much of your time. The station hotel? At the station hotel? Akechi repeated, looking intently at Tsujino, a flicker of interest in his eyes. Certainly, that's fine with me. Let's go. He turned to Kobayashi, who was standing a short distance away, and whispered something in his ear. Then he said, "Kobayashi, I'm going to the hotel with Mr. Tsujino. Take the luggage in a taxi and go home." "Yes, sir." Kobayashi followed the porter. Akechi and Tsujino walked side by side, chatting amiably, through the underpass and up to the second floor of Tokyo Station, where the hotel was located. As if anticipating their arrival, a luxurious room on the top floor had been prepared. A portly headwaiter bowed respectfully. As they sat down in comfortable armchairs at a round table covered with a rich tapestry, a waiter brought tea and pastries. "Leave us, please. And don't let anyone disturb us until I ring," Tsujino instructed the headwaiter, who bowed and left, closing the door behind him. They were alone. "Mr. Akechi, I've been looking forward to meeting you. I've been waiting impatiently for this day," Tsujino began, smiling warmly, but his eyes were sharp. Akechi leaned back in his armchair, a smile mirroring Tsujino's. "The feeling is mutual. On the train, I was thinking that you might be at the station to meet me. As expected. Then you must know my real name." Tsujino's casual words were laced with a chilling undertone. His left hand, resting on the armrest of his chair, trembled slightly. "I knew you weren't Mr. Tsujino from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs the moment I saw that carefully crafted business card. As for your real name, I'm not entirely sure, but the newspapers seem to call you 20 Faces." Akechi delivered this shocking revelation with a calm smile. Could this be true? A thief greeting a detective? And the detective, knowing the thief's true identity, accepting the invitation for tea? How could such an absurd situation arise? "Mr. Akechi, you are exactly as I imagined. You knew who I was from the start, yet you accepted my invitation. Even Sherlock Holmes couldn't have pulled that off. I'm thrilled. This is what makes life worth living. The thrill of this moment makes me glad to be alive." 20 Faces, disguised as Tsujino, spoke with an almost reverent tone, but Akechi wasn't fooled. This was a dangerous criminal who had made an enemy of the entire country. He must have planned for every contingency. Notice how 20 Faces' right hand remained in his pocket. What was he holding? Ha ha ha, you're a little too excited. This is nothing new to me. But 20 Faces, I have some bad news for you. Now that I'm back, your grand plan is doomed to fail. I won't let you touch a single item in the museum. And I'll be retrieving the treasures you stole from the Kusakabe residence. Let's be clear about that. Akechi blew a puff of cigarette smoke in 20 Faces' direction, a smile playing on his lips. Then let me make a promise, too. I will steal the museum's treasures on the appointed day, as promised. And as for the Kusakabe collection, ha ha ha. How can I return it? You were my accomplice in that crime, Mr. Akechi. Accomplice? That's a good one. Ha ha ha. The two men, the master thief and the famous detective, chatted amiably, their faces wreathed in smiles, but beneath the surface, a fierce battle of wills raged. Their situation was like a duel between two master swordsmen, their blades crossed, their minds locked in a deadly game of strategy. The slightest lapse in concentration could mean defeat. They continued their friendly banter, but beads of sweat glistened on 20 Faces' forehead despite the cool air. Their eyes, however, burned with an intense, almost feverish light. The trunk and the elevator. Why didn't Akechi simply arrest 20 Faces on the platform? It would have been so easy. Perhaps you, the reader, are frustrated by his inaction, but Akechi's confidence was absolute. He knew he could capture 20 Faces at any time. He was playing a deeper game. He was confident that he could prevent the museum heist and recover the stolen treasures, including those from the Kusakabe residence. Arresting the thief now would be premature. 20 Faces had numerous accomplices. If he were captured, his associates might scatter the stolen treasures, making recovery impossible. He would wait until he knew the location of the hidden loot before making his move, but he decided to play along with the thief's invitation. To gauge the extent of 20 Faces' cunning, Mr. Akechi, consider my position. You could capture me at any moment. All you have to do is ring that bell and ask for the police. Ha ha ha. What a thrilling game. Don't you feel the excitement? It's life or death. I'm standing on the edge of a precipice. 20 Faces' bravado was unwavering. He narrowed his eyes, studying the detective, and burst into laughter. Ha ha ha. Akechi laughed, too. Don't worry, there's no need for such theatrics. I came here knowing who you are, and I have no intention of arresting you now. I simply wanted to have a chat with the famous 20 Faces. There's no rush to capture you. You still have 9 days until the museum heist. I'll be watching your futile efforts with great interest. Ah, you're a true detective. So confident. I'm beginning to admire you. By the way, if you're not going to capture me, it seems I'll have to take you prisoner. 20 Faces' voice grew darker, and a sinister smile spread across his face. Mr. Akechi, aren't you afraid? Do you think I brought you here for no reason? Do you think I'm unprepared? Do you really believe I'll let you walk out of this room? We'll see about that. I intend to leave, whether you like it or not. I have business at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I'm a busy man. Akechi stood up and walked towards the window, as if admiring the view, yawning casually and wiping his face with a handkerchief. Just then, as if on cue, the portly headwaiter and another burly waiter entered the room and stood at attention before the table. Had 20 Faces rung the bell? Mr. Akechi, it seems you still don't understand my power. Don't be so complacent just because we're in the station hotel. Look. See that trunk by your feet? It's a bit large for my luggage, isn't it? It's empty. It's your coffin. These two gentlemen are going to bury you in it. Ha ha ha. Surprised? Didn't expect my men to infiltrate the hotel staff, did you? Don't bother shouting. These are my rooms. I've rented the entire floor. And just so you know, these aren't my only men. I have guards posted in the hallway as well. What a blunder. The famous detective had fallen into the thief's trap. He had willingly walked into the lion's den. There was no escape. 20 Faces hated bloodshed, so he probably wouldn't kill him. But Akechi was his greatest obstacle. He intended to lock him in the trunk, transport him to some unknown location, and keep him prisoner until after the museum heist. The two large men advanced towards Akechi, hesitating only momentarily, intimidated by the detective's aura. But 2 against 1, or even 3 against 1, was too much. even for the skilled Akechi. Was he destined to be captured by this master thief upon his return, suffering the ultimate humiliation for a detective? But look, even in this dire situation, Akechi's cheerful smile remained. And the smile widened, as if he found the situation amusing. Ha ha ha. Confused by his laughter, the two waiters stopped in their tracks, their mouths agape. Mr. Akechi, stop bluffing. What's so funny? Have you gone mad with fear? 20 Faces was bewildered by the detective's reaction. He could only resort to insults. Nothing. I just found your little performance quite amusing. But tell me, come over here and look out the window. There's something interesting to see. What could there be? Just the platform roof. Don't try to distract me with such childish tricks, Akechi. You're losing your touch. Intrigued despite himself, 20 Faces approached the window. Ha ha ha. Yes, just the roof. But there's something interesting beyond the roof. See? Over there. Akechi pointed. Between the roofs, on the platform. See that dark figure huddled there? Looks like a child. He's looking at this window through a small telescope. He looks familiar, doesn't he? The reader has probably already guessed who it was. Yes, it was Kobayashi. He was watching the hotel window through his pen-shaped telescope, waiting for a signal. That's Kobayashi. He didn't go home. No. I told him to find out which room I was in and watch the window from the platform. 20 Faces still didn't understand. So, what are you trying to do? He advanced menacingly towards Akechi. Look at my hand. If you try anything, this handkerchief will flutter out the window. Akechi's right hand was extended slightly out the window, holding a white handkerchief. That's the signal. The boy will run to the station office and call the police. It'll take them 5 minutes, maybe less, to surround the hotel. I'm confident I can hold you 3 off for 5, even 10 minutes. Ha ha ha. Shall I let go? It would be quite a spectacle, watching the great 20 Faces being arrested. 20 Faces looked from the handkerchief in Akechi's hand to Kobayashi on the platform, his expression darkening. Then, realizing he'd been outmaneuvered, his face softened slightly. So, if I let you go, you won't drop the handkerchief? A trade, then? Your freedom for mine? Of course. As I said, I have no intention of arresting you now. If I did, I wouldn't need to bother with this handkerchief charade. I'd just tell Kobayashi to call the police, and you'd be behind bars by now. Ha ha ha. But why? Why are you so determined to let me escape? Because it would be a shame to arrest you now. When I capture you, I intend to take your entire organization down, along with all the treasures you've accumulated. Perhaps I'm being too greedy. Ha ha ha. 20 Faces bit his lip and fell silent. Then, his expression suddenly changed, and he laughed. You're a remarkable man, Akechi. I applaud you. Don't take it personally. I was just testing you. I wasn't serious. Now, allow me to escort you to the lobby. But Akechi wasn't naive enough to fall for that. Very well, but these waiters are a bit of a nuisance. I'd prefer it if they, and your associates in the hallway, would retire to the kitchen. 20 Faces complied, ordering the waiters to leave and opening the door wide so the hallway was visible. Satisfied? You can hear them going down the stairs. Akechi finally moved away from the window and put the handkerchief in his pocket. He knew that 20 Faces couldn't possibly have control over the entire hotel. Once they were in the hallway, with other guests and hotel staff around, he'd be safe. They walked side by side towards the elevator like old friends. The elevator doors were open, and a young uniformed operator stood waiting. Akechi stepped inside, but then 20 Faces said, "Oh, I forgot my cane. You go ahead." The elevator doors slammed shut, and the elevator began to descend. Strange, Akechi thought, but he didn't seem alarmed. He watched the operator intently. As expected, when the elevator reached a point between the second and first floors, where it was enclosed by walls on all sides, it stopped abruptly. What's wrong? Akechi asked. I'm sorry, sir. There seems to be a malfunction. Please wait a moment. It should be fixed shortly, the operator said apologetically, fiddling with the controls. What are you doing? Step aside. Akechi grabbed the operator by the scruff of his neck and pulled him back with such force that the young man stumbled and fell. Don't try to fool me. Do you think I don't know how to operate an elevator? He flicked a switch, and the elevator smoothly resumed its descent. When they reached the ground floor, Akechi, still holding the controls, glared at the operator, who was still on the floor. The young man trembled and instinctively clutched at his right pocket. The detective's sharp eyes didn't miss this gesture. He lunged forward, reached into the pocket, and pulled out a 1,000-yen note. The elevator operator had been bribed. 20 Faces had planned to trap Akechi in the elevator for 5 or 10 minutes while he escaped down the stairs. Even the audacious 20 Faces couldn't risk walking through the crowded lobby with the detective, now that his disguise had been exposed. Akechi had promised not to arrest him, but 20 Faces couldn't be sure he would keep his word. Akechi dashed out of the elevator and ran towards the lobby. He saw 20 Faces, still disguised as Tsujino, descending the front steps. Sorry I'm late. There was a slight problem with the elevator. Akechi smiled and tapped 20 Faces on the shoulder. 20 Faces whirled around. His face was a mask of shock. He had been certain his elevator trick would work. Ha ha ha. What's wrong, Mr. Tsujino? You look a little pale. Oh, and the elevator operator asked me to give you this. Akechi waved the 1,000-yen note in front of 20 Faces and then placed it in his hand. He said you picked the wrong opponent, someone who knew how to operate an elevator, so he couldn't keep it stalled as instructed. He apologizes for the inconvenience. Ha ha ha. He turned and walked away without a backward glance. 20 Faces stared after him, the 1,000-yen note clutched in his hand. He clicked his tongue in annoyance and then called for his waiting car. This first encounter between the famous detective and the master thief had ended in Akechi's victory. 20 Faces had been spared, even though Akechi could have easily captured him. This was a profound humiliation for the proud thief. I'll have my revenge for this, he muttered, shaking his fist at Akechi's retreating figure. The arrest of 20 Faces. Ah, Mr. Akechi, I was just looking for you. Where is he? Akechi had barely walked 50 meters from the hotel when he was stopped. Imonisha? It was Detective Imonisha from the Metropolitan Police Department. We can exchange pleasantries later. What about the man calling himself Tsujino? You didn't let him escape, did you? How did you know about that? I saw Kobayashi acting strangely on the platform. That boy is stubborn. He wouldn't tell me anything at first, but I finally got him to confess. You went to the hotel with a man claiming to be Tsujino from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and you suspected he was 20 Faces in disguise. I called the ministry, and they said Mr. Tsujino was at his desk. So, the man at the hotel must be an imposter. I came to assist you. Thank you for your concern, but he's already gone. Gone? So it wasn't 20 Faces? It was. He's quite a character. Mr. Akechi, are you joking? You let him escape, knowing he was 20 Faces, without notifying the police. Imonisha was incredulous. I have my reasons. Your reasons? You can't just make such decisions on your own. You let a known criminal escape. I have a duty to pursue him. Which way did he go? By car, I presume. Imonisha was indignant. You're welcome to pursue him, but it will be futile. I don't take orders from you. I'm going to the hotel to get his license plate number. You don't need to go to the hotel. I know the number. It's 13887. You know the number? And you're not going after him? Imonisha was stunned, but there was no time to argue. He wrote down the number and ran to a nearby police box. The information was immediately relayed to every police station and box in the city. Apprehend license plate number 13887. 20 Faces, disguised as Mr. Tsujino from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, is in that car. This order electrified the police force. Every officer was on high alert, eager to capture the notorious thief. 20 minutes after 20 Faces left the hotel, a young officer stationed at a police box in Totsukamachi, Shinjuku, spotted the car. The young officer, known for his courage, saw a car speeding past his police box. He glanced at the license plate, 13887. His heart leaped, and he shivered with excitement. He hailed a passing taxi, jumped in, and shouted, "That car! 20 Faces is in that car. Follow it. Drive as fast as you can. Don't stop until the engine blows. Fortunately, the taxi driver was also a spirited young man, and his car was new and powerful. The chase was on. The two cars sped through the streets, attracting attention everywhere they went. A police officer was leaning out of the pursuing taxi, shouting, "Pursuit! Pursuit!" Onlookers yelled, "It's a chase! A chase!" Dogs barked, and pedestrians stopped to stare. The two vehicles weaved through traffic, narrowly avoiding collisions. Unable to maintain his speed on the crowded streets, 20 Faces turned onto the outer circular route, heading towards OG. He knew he was being pursued, but there was nothing he could do. He couldn't abandon the car in broad daylight in the middle of the city. As they passed Ikeburo, a loud bang echoed from the lead car. Had 20 Faces finally lost his patience and resorted to his pistol? No. This wasn't a gangster movie. Firing a pistol in the middle of a busy street wouldn't help him escape. It was a flat tire. 20 Faces' luck had run out. He tried to keep driving, but the car slowed down, and the taxi overtook him. With the taxi blocking his path, he had no choice but to stop. A crowd quickly gathered. Police officers from nearby converged on the scene. 20 Faces, disguised as Tsujino, was captured. It's 20 Faces. 20 Faces, the crowd shouted, surrounded by 3 officers. The thief hung his head in defeat. 20 Faces is caught. What an arrogant-looking fellow. That officer is amazing. Hooray for the police. Amidst the cheers of the crowd, the captured thief and the officers got into the taxi and headed for police headquarters. He was too big a prize for a local police station. When the news reached headquarters, the building erupted in cheers. The elusive phantom thief had been captured. It was thanks to Detective Imanishi's quick thinking and the young officer's bravery. The two were treated like heroes. Inspector Nakamura was particularly elated. He hadn't forgotten how 20 Faces had outwitted him during the Hashiba incident. The interrogation began immediately. Since 20 Faces was a master of disguise, no one recognized his face. They needed to call in witnesses to confirm his identity. They called Akechi's residence, but he was at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So, Kobayashi was summoned instead. Soon, the rosy-cheeked boy arrived at the interrogation room. He took one look at the captured man and confidently identified him as the imposter who had called himself Tsujino. "I'm the real one. That's him. That's the man," Kobayashi declared. "Ha ha ha, see? Even a child can see through your disguise. You can't fool us anymore. You are 20 Faces." Inspector Nakamura was triumphant. He had finally captured the thief who had humiliated him. He glared at 20 Faces. "But I'm not. This is terrible. I didn't know he was 20 Faces." The captured man, still disguised as the gentleman, insisted. "What? I don't understand. I don't understand either. He must have impersonated me. He used me as a decoy. Don't play games. We're not falling for that. No, it's true. Please listen. This is who I am. I'm not 20 Faces." The gentleman pulled a business card from his pocket. It read Shobei Matsushita, with the address of an apartment in Sujinami. "I'm Matsushita, as you can see. My business failed, and I'm currently unemployed. I live alone in a small apartment. Yesterday, I was strolling through Hibiya Park when I met a man who looked like a businessman. He offered me a strange but lucrative job. He said he'd pay me 5,000 yen, plus all expenses, to drive around Tokyo with him all day and do whatever he asked. It sounded too good to be true. 5,000 yen is a lot of money for an unemployed man like me, despite my appearance. He said there were some complications, but I told him I didn't need to know the details and accepted the offer. So, this morning, he had me drive him all over Tokyo. He told me to have lunch at the station hotel, which I did. He told me to wait in the car in front of the hotel. About 30 minutes later, a man came out of the hotel, opened the car door, and got in. I was shocked. I thought he was crazy. He looked exactly like me. Same face, same suit, same overcoat, same cane. It was like looking in a mirror. I was stunned, and then he did something even stranger. He got out of the car on the other side and walked away. He just walked through the car. As he passed me, he said, "Now, leave immediately. Drive as fast as you can. Go anywhere." Then he disappeared into the barbershop in the basement, right in front of the hotel. I thought it was strange, but I had agreed to do as he said, So I told the driver to speed away. I don't remember where we went, but near Waseda University, I noticed a car following us. I got scared and told the driver to go faster and then, well, you know the rest. It seems I was used as a decoy by 20 Faces for a mere 5,000 yen. No, not a decoy. I'm the real one. He's the imposter. He copied my face and my clothes. Look. I'm the real Shobei Matsushita. I'm the genuine article. He's the fake. Matsushita pulled at his hair and pinched his cheeks to prove his point. Inspector Nakamura had been fooled again. The triumph of capturing 20 Faces turned to ashes later. After questioning Matsushita's landlord, the police confirmed that he was a harmless, ordinary citizen. 20 Faces' meticulous planning was astounding. He had planted his men as hotel staff, bribed the elevator operator, and even recruited Matsushita as a decoy, all to ensure his escape from Tokyo Station. He hadn't needed to find someone who looked like him. He could transform anyone into his double. He simply needed a gullible person he could manipulate. And Shobei Matsushita, the unemployed gentleman, seemed like the perfect patsy. 20 Faces' new disciple. Kogoro Akechi lived a modest life with his young and beautiful wife, Fumio, his assistant, Kobayashi, and a housekeeper, in a quiet residential area of Ryudocho, Minato Ward. Akechi returned home in the evening, after stopping by a friend's house on his way back from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Kobayashi, who had just returned from police headquarters, went upstairs to Akechi's study and reported the incident with 20 Faces' double. I suspected as much. Poor Nakamura, Akechi said with a wry smile. Sensei, there's something I don't understand. Kobayashi always asked questions when something didn't make sense. I understand why you let 20 Faces escape, but why didn't you have me follow him? Don't we need to find his hideout to prevent the museum robbery? Akechi smiled and beckoned Kobayashi to the window. He'll let us know. Do you understand why? I humiliated him at the hotel. You can't imagine how insulting it is for a notorious thief like him to be spared by a detective. He must want to kill me. And I'm an obstacle to his plans. Look out the window. See that Kamishibai storyteller? It's a strange place to set up shop, isn't it? He's been standing there for a while, pretending not to notice us, but he's watching this house. Kobayashi looked out the window and saw a man with a Kamishibai stand, his demeanor suspicious. He's one of 20 Faces' men. He's watching us. Exactly. We don't need to look for them, they'll come to us. If we follow him, we'll find 20 Faces' hideout. Shall I follow him in disguise? Kobayashi was eager for action. No, there's no need for that. I have a plan. He's a cunning opponent. We can't be careless. By the way, Kobayashi, something interesting might happen to me soon. Don't be alarmed. I won't be outwitted by 20 Faces. Even if I appear to be in danger, it will be part of my plan. Don't worry. His serious tone worried Kobayashi. Sensei, if it's dangerous, let me do it. It would be terrible if something happened to you. Thank you. Akechi placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. But it's something only I can do. Trust me. Have I ever failed you before? Don't worry. Don't worry. The next evening, a beggar sat on the street in front of Akechi's house, near the spot where the Kamishibai storyteller had been the day before. He bowed to passers-by, mumbling something inaudible. He wore a dirty towel wrapped around his head, his ragged clothes patched and torn, and sat shivering on a straw mat, a picture of misery. But strangely, whenever there were no passers-by, his demeanor changed. He would raise his head, his sharp eyes peering through his unkempt beard, scanning Akechi's house. Akechi had been out that morning, but he returned around noon and, seemingly oblivious to the beggar, went up to his second-floor study, where he could be seen through the window, diligently writing at his desk. The beggar remained at his post for hours. Akechi also remained at his desk. No visitors came to the house all afternoon. Then, as evening approached, a strange figure entered through the low stone gate. The man had long, unkempt hair, a scraggly beard, and a dirty suit worn over a knit shirt. He wore a battered fedora. He looked like a vagrant, or perhaps a homeless person, an unsavory character. A moment later, angry shouts echoed from inside the gate. Akechi, don't pretend you don't recognize me. I've come to thank you. Open the door. I want to thank you and your wife properly. What? You don't want to see me? Well, I want to see you. Move aside. I'm coming in. It seemed Akechi had come out onto the porch to confront the vagrant, who was now shaking his fist and shouting at the top of his lungs. They couldn't hear Akechi's voice, only the vagrant's. The beggar, hearing the commotion, stood up, glanced around furtively, and crept closer to the gate. Peering through the bars, he saw Akechi standing on the porch, facing the vagrant, who was now on the steps, still shouting and gesticulating wildly. Akechi remained calm, observing the vagrant silently. But finally, he seemed to lose his patience. "Get out. I told you I don't want to see you," he shouted, and shoved the vagrant, who stumbled backward but quickly regained his balance and lunged at Akechi, trying to grab him. But the vagrant was no match for Akechi, who had a third-degree black belt in judo. In a flash, the detective twisted the vagrant's arm and threw him onto the pavement. The vagrant lay there for a moment, groaning in pain. When he finally got up, the door was closed, and Akechi was gone. The vagrant pounded on the door, but it was locked. "Damn you. I'll get you for this," he muttered, and walked out the gate. The beggar waited for the vagrant to pass and then followed him discreetly. A short distance from Akechi's house, he called out, "Hey, you." The vagrant turned around, startled. A dirty beggar stood before him. "What do you want, old man?" "I don't have any money for you." "It's not about money. I have a proposition for you." "What is it?" The vagrant eyed the beggar suspiciously. His manner of speaking was odd. "I'm not really a beggar. Just between us, I'm one of 20 Faces' men. I've been watching Akechi since this morning. You seem to have a grudge against him." So, the beggar was one of 20 Faces' men, as expected. "A grudge? That bastard sent me to prison. I'd do anything to get revenge." The vagrant shook his fist angrily. "What's your name?" "Toraz Akai." "Who's your boss?" "I work alone." "I see." The beggar thought for a moment. "Have you heard of 20 Faces?" "Of course. I've heard he's a remarkable thief." "Remarkable?" "He's a magician. He's planning to steal the national treasures from the museum. You see, Akechi is 20 Faces' enemy. You and he have a common enemy. How would you like to work for 20 Faces? It's your chance for revenge." Akai's eyes widened. "Really? You'd introduce me to 20 Faces?" "Yes. The boss will be pleased to have someone with a grudge against Akechi on his team. But first, I need you to do something for me, a little gift for the boss. I need you to kidnap Akechi." The beggar lowered his voice and glanced around, the detective in peril. "Kidnap him? That sounds like fun. I'm in. Anything to get back at that bastard. When do we do it?" Akai was eager. "Tonight." "Tonight? Fantastic. But how?" 20 Faces has a brilliant plan. One of our associates, a beautiful woman, will pose as a young wife with a complicated problem and ask for Akechi's help. She'll ask him to come to her house immediately to investigate. He'll go with her in a car driven by one of our men. He loves a good mystery, and he'll be off his guard with a beautiful woman. He'll fall for it. Our job is to wait for him at AMR Cemetery. We'll make sure he takes a route that passes through the cemetery. When the car arrives, we'll jump out, overpower him, and use this." The beggar took a small vial from his pocket. "It's a fast-acting anesthetic. We also have pistols. Another associate will be joining us. But don't worry, I'll let you handle Akechi. Here's your pistol." He took a pistol from inside his ragged clothes and handed it to Akai. "I've never used one of these before," Akai said, examining the weapon. "Don't worry, it's not loaded. Just point it at him and pretend to shoot. 20 Faces hates violence. This is just to scare him." Akai looked disappointed that the pistol wasn't loaded, but he pocketed it. "Let's go to the cemetery." "Not yet. It's too early. We're meeting at 7:30. He might be late. We have 2 hours. Let's get something to eat." The beggar unwrapped a dirty cloth bundle he was carrying and took out a hooded cloak, which he put on over his ragged clothes. By the time they finished their meal at a cheap restaurant and arrived at AMR Cemetery, it was completely dark, illuminated only by a few scattered streetlights. The deserted cemetery was an eerie place. Their rendezvous point was a secluded side road, rarely used even during the day. They sat down on a grassy bank, waiting. "What's taking so long?" "And it's freezing." "He'll be here soon." "It was 7:20 when I checked the clock at the shop near the cemetery entrance. It's been more than 10 minutes. He should be here any minute. They waited another 10 minutes, chatting occasionally, until they finally saw headlights approaching. Here he comes. That must be him. Get ready. The car stopped in front of them now. Two figures emerged from the darkness. You take that side. Right. They rushed to the car doors on either side of the back seat. They flung open the doors and pointed pistols at the passenger. The woman in the passenger seat also had a pistol, and so did the driver, who had turned around to face the back. 4 pistols were aimed at the single passenger in the back seat, and the passenger was, indeed, Kogoro Akechi. Had he fallen for 20 Faces' trap? Don't move, or we'll shoot, one of the men shouted, but Akechi remained motionless, leaning back against the seat, offering no resistance. He seemed almost too compliant, making the attackers uneasy. Get him, a low but forceful voice commanded. The beggar and Akai jumped into the car. Akai held Akechi down, while the other man pressed a cloth soaked in anesthetic over the detective's nose and mouth. After about 5 minutes, he removed the cloth. The drug had taken effect. Akechi was unconscious. He didn't put up much of a fight, the woman said, laughing. Rope. Give me the rope. The beggar took a coil of rope from the driver and, with Akai's help, tied up Akechi's hands and feet securely there. Now the famous detective is helpless. We can finally work without interference. Let's go. The boss is waiting. They tossed Akechi's bound body onto the floor of the car, got into the back seat, and sped away, heading for 20 Faces' hideout, the thief's lair. The car, carrying the beautiful woman, the beggar, Akai, and the unconscious Akechi, drove through quiet streets and finally stopped in front of a house in a dark, wooded area near Meiji Shrine in Yoyogi. It was a modest, 2-story house, with a nameplate on the gatepost that read Juro Kitagawa. The house was dark, with no lights in the windows, giving the impression of a quiet, ordinary family home. The driver, also one of the gang, got out and rang the doorbell. A moment later, a small window in the gate opened, and 2 large eyes peered out. The light from the gate lamp made them gleam unnervingly. Is that you? Did everything go smoothly? A voice whispered yes. Open up. The gate creaked open. A man in a dark suit stood inside, on guard. The beggar and Akai carried Akechi into the compound, followed by the woman. The gate closed behind them. The driver got back into the car and sped away. He must have taken the car to a hidden garage. Inside the gate, the 3 men carried Akechi to the front door. Suddenly, a bright light illuminated the porch. Akai, seeing the house for the first time, was startled by the sudden brightness, but that wasn't the only thing that surprised him. As the light came on, a disembodied voice boomed from somewhere, seemingly out of thin air. There's someone new. Who is he? The voice was strange, almost otherworldly. Akai looked around nervously. The beggar stepped closer to one of the porch pillars and spoke into it, as if into a telephone. He's a new recruit. He has a grudge against Akechi. He's trustworthy. Very well. Bring him in. The strange voice spoke again, and the sliding door opened silently, as if by magic. Ha ha ha. Surprised? I was talking to the boss. There's a hidden intercom system in this pillar. The boss is a cautious man, the beggar explained. But how did he know I was here? Akai was still puzzled. You'll find out. The beggar continued carrying Akechi into the house, and Akai followed. Another burly man stood guard inside the entrance hall, but he smiled and nodded as they passed. They opened a sliding door, entered a hallway, and walked to a room at the far end. Strangely, it was an empty 10-tatami room. The boss was nowhere in sight. The beggar gestured towards the alcove, and the woman went to the alcove post and pressed something. A heavy thud echoed through the room, and one of the tatami mats in the center of the floor sank, revealing a rectangular opening down the stairs. The beggar said. Akai looked into the opening and saw a wooden staircase leading down. What elaborate security measures! Even if someone managed to pass through the gate and the entrance hall, they would never find the boss without knowing about the hidden trapdoor. What are you waiting for? Come on. They carried Akechi down the stairs. A grinding sound echoed from above as the trapdoor closed. An ingenious mechanism. Even the basement wasn't the boss's room. They followed a dimly lit concrete corridor to a heavy steel door. The beggar knocked on the door. 3 knocks, a pause, then 2. The door opened, revealing a brightly lit, luxuriously furnished Western-style room. 20 Faces, a handsome man in his 30s, with neatly curled hair and a clean-shaven face, sat in a large armchair, smiling. Whether it was his real face or not, they couldn't be sure. Excellent work. I won't forget your effort. He was clearly pleased with the capture of his nemesis, Kogoro Akechi. And why wouldn't he be? With Akechi out of the way, he had no rivals left in Japan. They laid Akechi's bound body on the floor. Akai kicked Akechi's head several times. You really hate him, don't you? That's what I like to see in my men, but that's enough. Treat your enemy with respect. Besides, he's the only famous detective in Japan. Untie him and put him on that couch. 20 Faces knew how to treat a prisoner. They untied Akechi and laid him on the couch. He remained unconscious. The beggar reported the details of the abduction and explained how he had recruited Akai. Excellent work. Akai, you seem like a valuable asset. And I'm especially pleased that you have a grudge against Akechi. 20 Faces was in high spirits. Akai formally pledged his loyalty to 20 Faces. Then he asked the question that had been bothering him. Your security measures are impressive. The police are no match for you. But there's something I don't understand. How did you know I was there, at the entrance? Ha ha ha. That. Take a look at this. 20 Faces pointed to a stovepipe-like object hanging from the ceiling. Akai went to the object and looked into the angled opening at the bottom. To his astonishment, he saw a miniature view of the entrance hall and the gate, as if looking through a telescope. He could even see the guard standing by the gate. It's a periscope, like the ones they use in submarines. This one's a bit more complicated, though, 20 Faces explained. That explained the bright light on the porch, but that's not all. There are other mechanisms in this house, secrets that only I know. This is my true base of operations. I have other hideouts, but they're just temporary decoys. So, the abandoned house in Toamagahara where Kobayashi had been imprisoned was just one of those decoys. I'll show you around later. I have an art room back here. 20 Faces continued chatting excitedly. Behind his armchair was a large, vault-like door with a complex locking mechanism. There are several rooms back there. Ha ha ha. Impressed. This basement is much larger than the house above ground. And each room is filled with trophies from my career. I'll show you someday. There are still some empty rooms. They're reserved for my next acquisition. You read the newspapers, didn't you? The treasures from the National Museum. Ha ha ha. With Akechi out of the way, 20 Faces was certain of success. He laughed confidently. The Boy Detectives Club. When Akechi didn't return home the following morning, his household was in an uproar. They had the address of the woman who had supposedly requested his help, but when they investigated, they discovered no such person lived there. They finally realized it was a trap set by 20 Faces. The evening newspapers ran headlines like, Famous Detective Kogoro Akechi abducted, with Akechi's photograph and details of the incident. Radio broadcasts also reported the news. Our beloved detective has been captured. The museum is in danger. The 10 million residents of Tokyo shared the sense of frustration and anxiety. A dark cloud of uncertainty seemed to hang over the city, but no one was more upset than Kobayashi. He waited all night, then all the next day, but Akechi didn't return. The police said he had been abducted by 20 Faces. The newspapers and radio confirmed it. He was worried about Akechi and felt a deep sense of injustice on behalf of his mentor. He also had to comfort Mrs. Akechi. To her credit, she didn't cry, but her pale face and forced smile betrayed her anxiety. Mrs. Akechi, don't worry. Akechi-sensei wouldn't be captured so easily. I'm sure he has a plan. That's why he hasn't returned. Kobayashi tried to reassure her, but his own voice lacked conviction. Even the boy detective was at a loss. He had no leads to 20 Faces' hideout. 2 days earlier, one of the thief's men had been watching the house disguised as a Kamishibai storyteller. Perhaps there were other spies lurking nearby. If so, he could follow them and discover the thief's lair. He went upstairs several times to scan the street, but there was no one suspicious in sight. Now that they had captured Akechi, 20 Faces had no need for spies. On the morning of the third day, Sunday, as Kobayashi and Mrs. Akechi were finishing their gloomy breakfast, a boy burst in through the front door. Excuse me, is Kobayashi here? It's Hashiba. Kobayashi rushed to the door. It was Hashiba, his face flushed, out of breath. He must have run all the way. What a surprise. Come in. Kobayashi led the younger boy to the reception room. What brings you here? I heard about Mr. Akechi. It's terrible. I have something to discuss with you. You see, after that incident at our house, I became your biggest fan. I want to be just like you. I told my friends at school about what you did, and 10 of them want to be detectives, too. So we formed a boy detectives club. Of course, it won't interfere with our schoolwork. My father said it was fine, as long as we don't neglect our studies. Today's Sunday, so I brought everyone to visit you. They want to help you find Mr. Akechi. They say the Boy Detectives Club should use its power to find him. She looked at Kobayashi expectantly. Thank you, Kobayashi said, blinking back tears. He squeezed Shia's hand. Akechi-sensei would be so happy to hear this. Yes, please help me. Let's find some clues together, but I won't let you do anything dangerous. I wouldn't want anything to happen to you. I wouldn't be able to face your parents. I have a safe plan. Do you know about kikukomi? It's a detective technique where you gather information by talking to people, listening carefully for any clues, no matter how small. Children are better at this than adults because people are less guarded around them. It's more likely to work. We know the general direction the car went, and we have a description of the woman and the car, so we can conduct kikukomi in that area. We can talk to shopkeepers, delivery boys, mail carriers, children playing in the street, anyone. It might be difficult to track the car because the roads branch out in many directions, but with enough people, we can cover all the routes. We can split up and each follow a different road. If we do this all day, we might find a clue. Yes. Let's do it. I'll call my friends. She ran to the gate and returned a moment later with 10 boys, all upper elementary school age, looking healthy and energetic. Kobayashi greeted them from the porch and explained his plan in detail. The boys were enthusiastic. Hooray for Chief Kobayashi. One of them shouted, appointing Kobayashi their leader. Let's go. The Boy Detectives Club marched out of Akechi's gate, ready for action. 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The Boy Detectives Club diligently continued their search for 4 days, using their free time after school, but they found no useful clues. However, it was a difficult case, one that had stumped even the thousands of adult detectives in Tokyo. The boys' lack of success wasn't due to incompetence. In fact, these brave boys would play a crucial role in the case later on. December 10th, the dreaded day of the museum heist, was fast approaching, with Akechi still missing. The police were frantic. The targeted items were national treasures, and the Superintendent General, as well as Inspector Nakamura, who was directly involved in the 20 Faces case, were worried sick. Then, 2 days before the heist, on December 8th, another shocking development occurred. A letter from 20 Faces was published in the Tokyo Mainichi Shimbun. The newspaper wasn't affiliated with the thief, but they couldn't ignore a letter from 20 Faces himself. After a heated editorial meeting, they decided to publish it in full. The letter was long, but the gist of it was, I previously announced my intention to rob the National Museum on December 10th. However, I've decided to be more precise. I wish to inform the citizens of Tokyo that the heist will take place at 4 p.m. on December 10th. I urge the museum director and the superintendent general to take every possible precaution. The tighter the security, the more glorious my victory will be. The announcement of the exact time, in addition to the date, was an act of breathtaking audacity. And the sarcastic warning to the museum director and the superintendent general added insult to injury. The citizens of Tokyo were stunned. Even those who had dismissed 20 Faces' threats as bluster were now taking them seriously. The director of the National Museum, Dr. Kitakoji, a renowned historian, was so alarmed that he went to police headquarters to discuss security measures with the superintendent general. The matter was even discussed at a cabinet meeting. The Prime Minister and the Minister of Justice were so concerned that they summoned the Superintendent General for a private meeting to offer words of encouragement. Finally, the dreaded day arrived. Early on the morning of December 10th, the entire museum staff, including Dr. Kitakoji, 3 curators, 10 clerks, and 16 guards and attendants, reported for duty, taking up their assigned positions. The museum was closed to the public. 50 elite police officers, led by Inspector Nakamura, were deployed around the museum at the gates, along the walls, and inside the building, creating an impenetrable security cordon at 3:30 p.m. With only 30 minutes to go, the tension was palpable. A large police car arrived, carrying the Superintendent General and the Chief of the Criminal Investigation Bureau. The Superintendent General, unable to bear the suspense any longer, had decided to oversee the security arrangements personally. After inspecting the security measures, they went to the director's office to meet with Dr. Kitakoji. "I'm honored by your presence," the old scholar said. "It's my duty." The Superintendent General replied with a forced smile. "I couldn't stay away. It's a disgrace that we have to go to such lengths for a mere thief. This is the greatest humiliation I've experienced in my career." "Indeed," Dr. Kitakoji chuckled weakly. "I feel the same. That young scoundrel has given me insomnia for a week." "Well, only 20 minutes to go. Surely even a magician can't steal all those artifacts in 20 minutes, with such tight security." I don't know what he's capable of. I just hope these 20 minutes pass quickly." The three men fell silent, staring at the clock on the wall. The Superintendent General, a large man in a gold-braided uniform, the chief of the Criminal Investigation Bureau, of average build with a neat mustache, and the thin, stooped Dr. Kitakoji in his suit, all sat in their armchairs, anxiously watching the clock. After several minutes, the chief of the Criminal Investigation Bureau broke the silence. "I wonder what's happened to Akechi. I know him well, and this is strange. He's not one to make such a blunder." The Superintendent General shifted in his chair. "You all talk about Akechi as if he were some kind of deity. He's just a private detective. How much can he really do? He boasted about capturing 20 faces single-handedly, but that was just empty talk. This incident will teach him a lesson. But considering his past achievements, I wouldn't dismiss him so easily. I was just talking to Nakamura outside, and we both agree that we could use his help right now." Just as the chief finished speaking, the door opened, and a figure entered the room. "Akechi is here," the figure said with a smile. "Akechi," the chief exclaimed, jumping to his feet. It was Kogoro Akechi, impeccably dressed in a dark suit, his hair tousled. "Akechi, how did you—" "I'll explain later. There's something more important. Of course, we must prevent the theft. It's too late. The appointed time has passed." They all looked at the clock. The minute hand had indeed passed 4 o'clock, so 20 faces lied? There's no sign of any disturbance inside the museum. "Yes. He failed," the chief shouted triumphantly. "No, he kept his promise. This museum is already empty." Akechi's voice was calm. "The detectives rampage." "What are you talking about? Nothing's been stolen. I just inspected the galleries myself. And we have 50 officers surrounding the building. My men aren't blind," the Superintendent General roared, glaring at Akechi. "But they are gone. 20 faces used his magic again. Shall we go and see for ourselves?" Akechi replied calmly. "You insist something has been stolen? Very well, let's see. Dr. Kitakoji, let's go to the galleries and see if this man is telling the truth." Even the skeptical Superintendent General was now curious. "Very well. Come, Dr. Kitakoji." Akechi smiled at the old director and took his hand, leading the way out of the office. The 4 men walked down the hallway towards the main gallery. "Akechi, you must be dreaming. Everything is here," the chief exclaimed as they entered the gallery. Indeed, the glass display cases were filled with ancient Buddhist statues. Nothing seemed to be missing. "These?" Akechi pointed to a display case. He turned to the guard on duty. "Open this case, please." Although he didn't recognize Akechi, the guard obeyed, unlocking the large glass doors. Then, something shocking happened. Had Akechi gone mad? He stepped into the display case, approached the largest wooden statue, and snapped off its arm. Before anyone could react, he proceeded to damage 5 other statues, all designated national treasures. He broke off arms, heads, and fingers, leaving the priceless artifacts in ruins. "Akechi, what are you doing? Stop. Stop it," the Superintendent General and the chief shouted, but Akechi ignored them. He stepped out of the display case, returned to Dr. Kitakoji's side, and took his hand again, smiling. "Akechi, what's the meaning of this outrage? This is vandalism. These are priceless national treasures." The chief was furious. He raised his hands as if to strike Akechi. "Ha ha ha. National treasures? Are you blind? Look closely at the damaged areas. Examine the breaks." The chief, intrigued by Akechi's confident tone, approached the damaged statues and examined the broken surfaces. To his astonishment, the freshly broken surfaces were a bright, clean white, completely different from the dark, aged patina of the rest of the statues. Such new wood couldn't possibly be part of a Noro period sculpture. You're saying, these are fakes? Exactly. If you had any artistic sense, you would have recognized them as fakes without me having to break them. They're modern replicas made of new wood, painted to look old. Any skilled craftsman can create such forgeries. Dr. Kitakoji, what is the meaning of this? Fakes in the National Museum, the Superintendent General demanded. I'm speechless, the old director stammered, his face pale. 3 curators rushed into the gallery, drawn by the commotion. One of them, an expert in ancient art, took one look at the damaged statues and cried out, "These are all fakes." But that's impossible. The originals were here yesterday. I was in this gallery yesterday afternoon. I'm certain of it. So, the originals were here yesterday, but today they've been replaced with fakes. What's going on? The Superintendent General was bewildered. Don't you see? The museum has been robbed, Akechi declared, pointing to another display case. What? You mean, the chief stammered. The art expert, understanding Akechi's meaning, hurried to the other display case and peered at the ancient Buddhist paintings inside. Then he shouted, "These are fakes, too. Every single one. Check the other cases." "Hurry," the chief ordered, but the curators were already frantically examining the contents of every display case. "They're all fakes. All the valuable pieces have been replaced." They rushed downstairs to the lower galleries and returned a few minutes later with several other staff members, all looking furious. "It's the same downstairs. All the important pieces are gone, only the worthless items remain. But it's impossible. We're certain the originals were here yesterday. We all checked." "So, the originals were here until yesterday evening?" the Superintendent General asked. "Absolutely," the curators replied in unison. "Then 20 Faces men must have snuck in last night," he concluded. "That's impossible. We had officers posted everywhere, at the gates, along the walls, inside the building, and Dr. Kitakoji and 3 staff members were on duty all night. There's no way they could have moved all those artifacts without being seen. It's simply not possible. I don't understand. It's baffling. But 20 Faces wasn't as bold as he claimed to be. He simply switched the real artifacts with fakes and then announced the heist. His 4 p.m. deadline was meaningless. It wasn't meaningless, Akechi said, as if defending the thief. He was still holding Dr. Kitakoji's hand. "What? Not meaningless? What do you mean?" the Superintendent General asked. "Look." Akechi pointed to a vacant lot behind the museum. "This is the key to the mystery. This is why I had to wait until December 10th. The vacant lot had once contained an old Japanese-style building used as a staff dormitory, but it had been demolished a few days earlier. Piles of lumber and roof tiles lay scattered around. They demolished the old dormitory. But what does that have to do with 20 Faces? The chief asked, perplexed. "You'll see. Could someone please ask Inspector Nakamura and the officer who was on duty at the back gate around noon to come here?" One of the curators hurried downstairs and returned with Nakamura and a young officer. "Were you on duty at the back gate around noon today?" Akechi asked the officer. "Yes, sir," the officer replied, standing at attention. "Did you see a truck leaving through the back gate between noon and 1 p.m.? "Yes, sir." "The truck carrying lumber from the demolition site?" "Exactly. Now do you understand? That truck contained the stolen artifacts, hidden among the lumber." "You mean, some of the demolition workers were 20 Faces men?" Nakamura asked, blinking. "Perhaps all of them. 20 Faces planned this meticulously, waiting for the perfect opportunity. The demolition started on December 5th, didn't it? The demolition schedule would have been known months in advance. December 10th would have been the ideal day to remove the lumber. And 4 p.m. was the time when he was certain the real artifacts would be safely hidden in his lair, and the switch would be discovered. What a brilliant plan. 20 Faces magic always involved a trick that no one could have anticipated. But Akechi, even if they could smuggle the artifacts out that way, how did they get into the display cases? When did they make the switch? The workers leave in the evening. The switch was made last night. The workers gradually brought the fakes into the museum, little by little, along with their tools. Paintings could be rolled up, statues disassembled and wrapped in cloth. No one would suspect anything. Everyone was focused on preventing theft, not on what was being brought in. The fakes were hidden among the lumber, waiting for nightfall. But who put them in the display cases? The workers aren't here at night. And even if some of them stayed behind, how could they get into the galleries? The museum is locked at night. Dr. Kitakoji and 3 other staff members were here all night. It's impossible. That's where another audacious trick comes in. The 3 staff members who were supposedly on duty last night, have they returned home? They went home this morning, a curator replied. Call their homes and ask if they've returned. The staff members had no phones, but they could be reached through neighbors. When they called, they discovered that none of the 3 had returned home. Their families had assumed they were still at the museum. It's strange that all 3 are still missing, hours after they left the museum. They wouldn't be out having fun after being on duty all night. Don't you see? They were abducted by 20 Faces men. Abducted? When? Yesterday evening, as they were leaving their homes to come to work. Yesterday evening? But then the 3 men who were here last night were 20 Faces accomplices. The real staff members were held captive, while their doubles took their places. It was a simple trick. With his own men inside the museum, switching the artifacts was child's play. So, those were his men. I was fooled. I was so careless. Dr. Kitakoji groaned, his face pale, his eyes wide with anger. But how could he have been fooled? 20 Faces was one thing, but his accomplices couldn't have been so skilled at disguise that even the director couldn't recognize them. It didn't seem possible capturing the phantom thief. But Akechi, the superintendent general, said, "You seem to know everything about the robbery. Is this just speculation? Or do you have proof?" "It's not speculation. I heard it from 20 Faces' own men. I just came from his hideout." "What? You were at his hideout? How?" The superintendent general was stunned. "I wasn't abducted. It was all part of my plan. I infiltrated his organization last year. A strange man came to my office, asking to be my apprentice. I was shocked. He looked exactly like me. Same height, same build, same face, even the same curly hair. He wanted to be my double, my stand-in. That I secretly hired him and set him up in a safe house. That proved useful this time. The day I was supposedly abducted, I went to his safe house, we exchanged clothes, and he returned to my office in my place. A while later, I went to my office disguised as Toraz Akai, the vagrant, and staged a fight with my double on the porch. 20 Faces men were watching, and they believed my story. They offered me a job. That's how I infiltrated his organization and gained access to his hideout. But 20 Faces is cautious. He kept me busy with menial tasks and wouldn't let me leave the house. He didn't reveal his plans then. Today, I decided to act. I waited until this afternoon. Around 2 p.m., the basement door opened, and his men came down, carrying the stolen artifacts. I had prepared food and drinks. I offered a celebratory toast to the returning men and the others who had stayed behind. They were so happy about their success that they drank freely. After about 30 minutes, they began to collapse, one by one, until they were all unconscious. I had drugged their drinks. I took some anesthetic from the thief's medicine cabinet and added it to their drinks. Then, I slipped out of the hideout and went to the nearest police station. I told them everything and asked them to arrest 20 Faces men and recover the stolen artifacts. Congratulations. We've recovered everything. The museum's collection, the treasures from the Kusakabe residence, and everything else 20 Faces has stolen will be returned to their rightful owners. The audience was spellbound. The famous detective had lived up to his reputation. Single-handedly, he had infiltrated the thief's lair, recovered the stolen treasures, and captured the criminals. Akechi, well done. I misjudged you. I apologize, the superintendent general said, shaking Akechi's left hand. Why his left hand? Because Akechi's right hand was still holding Dr. Kitakoji's. Why was he still holding the old director's hand? Did you drug 20 Faces, too? You mentioned his men, but not him. You didn't let him escape, did you? Nakamura asked anxiously. He didn't return to the hideout. But I've captured him, too. Akechi smiled. Where is he? Where did you capture him? Here. Akechi replied calmly. Here? Where? Right here. What are you talking about? I'm talking about 20 faces. I am, too. Stop talking in riddles. Everyone in this room is known to us. Are you saying 20 faces is hiding somewhere in this room? In a manner of speaking. Shall I show you the proof? Could someone please ask the 4 guests waiting in the reception room downstairs to come up here? Akechi made another surprising request. A curator hurried downstairs and returned a moment later with 4 people. The sight that greeted them made everyone gasp. Leading the group was a white-haired, white-bearded old gentleman. It was Dr. Kitakoji. The other 3 were the missing museum staff members. I rescued these gentlemen from 20 Faces' hideout, Akechi explained, but there were 2 Dr. Kitakojis. One had just come up from downstairs, and the other was the one whose hand Akechi had been holding. 2 identical old gentlemen, same clothes, same face, stared at each other in disbelief. Now do you understand how skilled 20 Faces is at disguise? Akechi exclaimed. He suddenly twisted the arm of the Dr. Kitakoji he had been holding and wrestled him to the ground. He ripped off the white wig and beard, revealing a head of dark hair and a young, smooth-faced IT was 20 Faces. Ha ha ha. 20 Faces, you've been very patient. It must have been difficult for you, listening to me reveal your secrets, pretending to be oblivious. You couldn't escape, with all these people watching. And besides, my hand was on your wrist the whole time, like a handcuff. Wasn't it uncomfortable? Forgive me, I may have teased you a bit too much. Akechi looked down at the defeated thief, his tone mockingly sympathetic. But why hadn't 20 Faces escaped earlier? He had accomplished his goal. He could have left with his accomplices last night, but that was 20 Faces. He had stayed to witness the chaos he had created, to see the police bewildered by the fake artifacts. If Akechi hadn't appeared, he probably would have revealed the deception himself at 4 p.m., just to add to the drama. A typical 20 Faces stunt. But his gamble had backfired. Akechi turned to the Superintendent General. Sir, I present to you the Phantom Thief, 20 Faces. He bowed. Everyone was so stunned that they forgot to praise the detective's brilliant work. They simply stared in disbelief. Then, Inspector Nakamura, recovering from his shock, approached 20 Faces, took out a rope, and expertly tied his hands behind his back. Akechi, thank you. Thanks to you, I've finally captured 20 Faces. This is the happiest day of my life. Nakamura's eyes glistened with tears of gratitude. I'll take him downstairs and show him off to the men. Come on, 20 Faces. Get up. Nakamura led the dejected thief towards the stairs, accompanied by the young officer. A group of officers were gathered near the front entrance of the museum. They rushed towards Nakamura as he emerged from the building with 20 Faces. Gentlemen, rejoice. With Akechi's help, we've finally captured him. This is 20 Faces. Nakamura announced proudly. A cheer erupted from the officers. 20 Faces looked miserable. The usually arrogant thief seemed to have accepted his fate. He hung his head, his usual smile gone. They formed a procession, with 20 Faces in the center, and walked out the front gate. Beyond the gate were trees, and beyond the trees, 2 police cars. Someone bring one of those cars here. Nakamura ordered. An officer ran towards the cars. Everyone's attention was focused on him. For a brief moment, no one was watching 20 Faces. It was his chance. He wrenched his hands free from Nakamura's grasp with surprising strength. Hey, stop. By the time Nakamura reacted, 20 Faces was already running, his hands still tied behind his back, his body hunched forward, heading towards the trees. A group of elementary school children, returning from a walk, stood at the edge of the trees, watching the commotion. 20 Faces cursed under his breath. He had to pass through the group of children to reach the trees. They would probably be scared and run away when they saw him. If not, he would just knock them aside. He charged towards the children, but instead of scattering in fear, the children shouted and rushed towards him. The reader has probably guessed who they were. It was the Boy Detectives Club. They had been patrolling the area, waiting for an opportunity to help. Kobayashi was the first to reach 20 Faces, tackling him like a missile. She was next, followed by the others. They piled on top of the thief, whose hands were still tied, and wrestled him to the ground. It was truly over for 20 Faces. Thank you, boys. You were very brave. Nakamura thanked the children and, with the help of the other officers, lifted 20 Faces to his feet and led him towards the approaching police car. Just then, a gentleman in a dark suit emerged from the museum. It was Akechi, alerted by the commotion. Kobayashi, seeing his mentor safe and sound, let out a cry of joy and ran to his side. Kobayashi. Akechi embraced the boy. It was a heartwarming sight. The teacher and his apprentice, working together, had finally captured the phantom thief. They were overjoyed to be reunited and congratulated each other on their success. The police officers, touched by the scene, smiled, their hearts filled with warmth. The Boy Detectives Club could contain their excitement no longer. They raised their hands in the air and cheered. Hooray for Akechi-sensei! Hooray for Chief Kobayashi!